Ooh, we might be live. Testing, 1, 2. Hello. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Roy, hello. Thank you. Yeah, it's all kicked off, hasn't it? Thanks to you guys. Hello, David. How's the levels and everything? Hello, Mato. Thank you. Very loud music playing right now. Okay. Piano House Studio is in the house. Levels all good. Hello, Elizabeth. One of those. Welcome. And thank you. Hello, Darren. Welcome. Great question. Anyone got any burning questions? Chat first. Short echo on everything, or just voice, or just music. Oh, double song. Hang on. That's going to be... How's that? Oh, yes. I know what that is. There we go. Oh, hang on, 1 second. This might risk. I'm going to swap my audio driver over. Oh, it's worked. There we go. Oh, much better. This is interesting. Yeah, I was replying to someone in the chat recently who was saying, why would you want to sound like something else? Because they were clearly angry at my video title about why your tech house doesn't sound like Malp, etc. Oh, did you see? Did everyone see West End commented? I couldn't believe that. Actual producer of the track chipped in. That was great. Yeah, someone said, why would you want to sound like someone else? So, yeah, I responded with, you could definitely be truly original. You could ask someone who has no musical training to put a song together. It would be very original. It just probably wouldn't be played very much. Experimentation is good, though. Yeah, all good. Can't please everybody. Especially in a niche of a niche. People in adjacent niches get offended that you're not talking about their niche. It's not changed. It's good though. Polarization adds to the. Well, it's good for the algorithm. So I'm benefiting. Thank you, Zach. Hello, Dana, Dana. How long have I been producing for? Producing not that long, but I've been making music for, well, professionally about 15, 16 years. And longer than that, actually, just had a little thing back in my early uni days where I was trying to mix from my bedroom, and actually, no, that didn't make any money until I got my job at the music shop where I started meeting clients in my 20s. So technically, yeah, 20 years now going on. Do I do track reviews? Yeah, I've had about 1,000 messages on Insta asking me for one-to-one. And the answer is always going to be the same. It's if I each video takes me, because I'm so bad at the videos, they take me about 3 days, and the rest of the week I am actually making music for a living. So if I was to do one-to-one tuition, it would have to give up either my job or the YouTube channel, and I would rather teach many people than one person. No offense, but you know, I do like one-to-one. Part of the way when my first job was in retail, as most people's is. Terrible job at the well, it was at music shop at least, so I got staff discount on music software, which was good, but terrible wages. So to supplement that wage, I used to do one-to-one tuition. As soon as I got my driving license, I would go to people's houses and help them mostly set up computers and install stuff, but we did a little bit of training on probably Cubase back then. Something like that, Pro Tools, Cubase, Logic. Thank you, Outrider. Thank you. Yeah, I do edit my own video. Can you tell? Yeah, it's I'm glad you like it though. It's not the best, but trying to do them as one long song mix I've kind of preferred, because that means I can't do much editing then apart from in the voice. Thank you, Mato. Thank you, Dana. Dana? Dana? I've got so many international viewers now. I cannot presume the pronunciation of any of these names is what I would think it would be from my country. Actually, I do want to readdress which Outrider asked how long I'd been producing. Dana, thank you. Like Dana White. Yeah. Okay, cool. Welcome. Yeah, so Outrider, producing is you'll hear me start again. You'll see me comment a lot when people mention producer. It's a bit of a bugbear of mine because the language has been heavily distorted over the last kind of 10 years. Now everyone has access to all this great tech and can make music on their own. This umbrella term, bedroom producer, beat maker, kind of came about, and it runs counter to what I know a producer to be, because I'm from a little bit before that all kicked in, and it was a valuable lesson I learned from lots of people I've worked with over the years. But producers have a very specific role, and I think if you're aware of all the different roles, not only does it make it easier as a newcomer, but it kind of helps you compartmentalize how you might approach creativity. Because a producer's job is, I see it like it's a film director. If you look at the greats, like, I mean, it's not always this. Don't get it. This is flexible. Don't get me wrong. But if you look at the greats like Rick Rubin, Quincy Jones, Max Martin, they're not necessarily. They actually don't really know how to play an instrument or what a chord is, and they don't know what an EQ is. That might shock a few people, but the job of a producer is not to know all of the creative tools. Their job is to sit at the back of the room and guide the session, guide the production as a whole into a direction, probably towards an audience. A good producer will know where a track is supposed to go. And I've worked with great producers that basically are completely hands off, and they're like the closest part of the creative chain to a real customer, a real listener, because they react emotionally. So they don't have to know chords and EQs and all that kind of stuff and compressors, because they'll just be able to tell you, is it doing the right thing emotionally? And that's what a producer really should be, in my opinion. So when you're producing your own tracks, that's not the sound design, that's not the engineering, it's not when you're EQing things and compressing. It's not when you're writing chords, that's not production. So when you separate writing, engineering, production, and performing as well, there's lots of subtitles, titles, sub-niches underneath the umbrella term. But when you separate those in your mind, I think it's easier to both start and finish tracks as well. And it also literally pays to know the difference, because when things get legal, it's good to know whether you have producer credits, writing credits, whether you have publishing, recording credits, engineering, royalties, all these kind of things. They literally pay differently. So it pays to know all the different roles. Play something, make some noise. What do you think this is? A music stream? Pro 5000. I'm on my producer rant. Do you mind? Yeah, I used to consider myself entirely a writer and engineer, because production is, when you're really close to the music and you're still obsessed with all of those little details, like, oh, I've got too much 5K in my snare drum, and you can't be thinking about the bigger picture. So the knowing the different hats to wear, definitely a bonus. Let's put some. Anyone guess what tune I was making a tribute track to this week? Kerncraft. No. Satisfaction. You got it, Benassi. Half naked chicks. Indeed. There was a whole run of those kind of videos, wasn't there? For about a year, everyone went down that route on MTV. The full sexualization of house. Yes, so what's making the pumping sound? Part of why, there's a couple of reasons I'm making this track, because I'm working on a video about sidechains, because initially I thought that would be a very engineering type subject, but then a bit like the delay video I did, I kind of found a way to talk about it which is quite musical. So because it is a rhythmic thing, sidechaining it's both engineering and rhythmic. So it's my go-to sidechain is something called STFU, which looks like this. Now, the real name of these plugins is not a sidechain, because it's not sidechaining from anything. The sidechain is the real name of the detector circuit in a piece of gear. Like the compressor's detector would detect the audio on the way in, or detect the audio from another source and then react to that. That's a sidechain. These are technically tremolo plugins. Getting all geeky on you there. So this is just a volume envelope, basically. So anything that's not your sub-frequencies sidechained off your kick drum to make room down there, anything that's not that, I consider kind of, it's an artistic decision, it's preference, because it's rhythmic. So this is how you basically, this is how you suck. Let me show you the simple version of this, because that one's quite complicated. It's by Zeke. It's a freebie. Of course, it's a freebie. I love my freebies. So it normally looks like this. Ignore the other one. I was just playing around with complex shapes. You can probably, the most simple way of visualizing it is this. And the reason I was doing a satisfaction style track was because I think the sidechain is absolutely key to that track's groove and appeal. It sounds like the speakers are completely giving up. I love it. It's really aggressive, but it's because of there's another thing going on, because of the reverb on the sound, you don't lose the note, even when the note is completely deleted by the suck, as it were. So yes, STFU. Yeah, Kickstart. I've come across Kickstart. Yeah, yep. Kickstart's not free though, is it? Played in gate technique. Are you asking, is this a type of gate technique, or what is my gating technique? Thank you, Don. That is the trick, the reverb. Yes, very much essential to this kind of, if you're going to go heavy sidechain. Yeah. Yeah, it's about $15, yeah. They all do the same thing. Volume envelope. Before this, I used the, it's got the correct name, tremolo inside the melder. I think it's M tremolo. You could do exactly the same thing in that plugin. Another freebie. It's a little less friendly as a user interface, though. You just go into custom shape and you do it that way. Okay, custom shape. Make sure it's tied to the beat. No phase rotation. Start again. A little bit less friendly than the STFU. That's why I moved over. But you got tons of free options for virtual side chains. I know we're going to hit 10K tomorrow. It's so scary. What have you all been doing? Telling people? Yeah, I mean, I knew why the Waves video blew up, because I picked the right keyword at the right moment when all that was hot topic. And I wanted to tell people that they didn't need to buy Waves anyway. I thought that was an important little message to get across. But so that, you know, I expected that to do well. Obviously not that well, but it turns out I've hit on a bit of a interesting subject with the tech house Phrygian observation. Good to know. Akai's mother ducker. Do you have an opinion on FL Studio? Yeah, I mean, it seems to be a little bit easier for some things, like especially. I mean, it makes complete sense if you're a trap fan, like any kind of hip hop. You like programming your drums in that kind of sequencer, which is a lot more like the old school sequences that were on the 808, 909, those kind of sequences. So the way those drums are set up, I think that's really cool. Some of the automation functions are really cool as well. A little bit convoluted, but very powerful. Lots of great built-in plugins. The workflow isn't to my tastes. I preferred Ableton for just nice, plain and simple drag and drop, get going. Because I'm too much of a geek. So if you put me in an environment like my ideal DAW would probably be Reaper, like in truth, because of just it's literally every option ever. I don't think it looks very nice, but the problem with putting me in a situation like that is I will just take forever to finish anything. So I kind of like Ableton's. Ableton just gives you the essentials on the surface and lets you dive in later, and it's a little bit faster for me. Also, I've used heavily the ability to drag in tracks from other sessions. That you see this synth here. If I want this synth in another session, I can just drag it in, and all of the effects and the automation and everything that comes with it. I don't have to. It's a great way of being fast, which is kind of essential when you get to the point where you're doing this for a living. You need to be efficient as well as good. Can't be taking 6 months on a track these days. 100,000 tracks a day going up onto Spotify. Did you know? Spotify alone. 350. Was that 35 million? I think a year. Ridiculous. Yeah. Yeah, it's the problem with, I wouldn't get DAW envy. If you're on the FL Studio, stay on FL Studio. It's they're all very capable. There's no, certainly don't listen to anyone who talks about quality. There's no difference in quality between any of them. That's down to your plugins, really. The root way a DAW handles digital audio in the 32-bit float domain, getting mathematical on you. That was solved in like the late 90s by Steinberg with Cubase. We got 32-bit audio. Took Pro Tools a while to catch up. But everyone's there now. Everyone's doing 32-bit audio, so it's and that's what, 15,000 decibels of headroom. Yeah, I don't think we need anything more than that, given that we can't hear more than about 120 decibels. So nothing about quality about DAW. So don't get DAW envy unless you spot literally a feature that you couldn't live without, that you think would make you super creative. But the grass is always greener on the other side, as they say. Been there, done that. Learn it like a second language, yes. Beat and delete, yes. Absolutely. I think FL Studio and Ableton are very kind of polar opposite as well in their workflow. So it is, I saw a Ben Jordan video trying to learn Ableton. He's an FL Studio user, isn't he? And yeah, it's super confusing for FL Studio users and vice versa. Very different workflows. I've not used it. It was still called Fruity Loops last time I used it, put it that way. I keep one eye on it, obviously, because it's important to know what they're up to. But I don't use it I've not used it for a long time. Horses for courses, as they say. Different strokes for different folks. You stepped on stage and broke a leg and a ligament. Oh, unfortunate. I'm missing 2 ligaments in a knee. It was a less rock and roll incident though. I was drunk, trying to climb a fence. Now I don't have ligaments. Bit of a shame. Hope you get well. Took me about 3 months to be able to walk again. Excuse me for the slurping. I'm on a cup of tea, of course. I've been lying to you for all these years. The coffee donations don't go towards coffee. It's tea, really. I'm sorry to admit. What burning questions have we got? How many sugars? 2 sweeteners, unfortunately. When you sit down for a living, you've got to really keep an eye on that. Yeah, I do miss the taste of proper sugar in a brew, but there we go. So the most important things are for a new producer in swr. SWR. Comment deleted. Try again. We'll come back to that one when I figure out what you were meaning. New producer. Dawn, burning question, what's the take on ghost production? What's my take on ghost production in the EDM scene? Well, I am one. I'm a ghost producer stroke writer for a few acts. Yeah, I've seen all sides of it. I've been sued for copying my own bass line between 2 different artists. That was interesting. And and sometimes it's really worked in my favor. It's I don't know how old you are, but it's the same thing as the old Star Wars movies. Remember when, they didn't know if Star Wars was going to be a big thing. So some of them took royalties and most of them just took a very, very small pay packet, what we call work for hire in the industry. You take some money and you walk away. There's no royalty payment at all. So all of your rights are transferred. So some of those, some of the Star Wars actors that made that magic were paid pittance, and then some became very rich indeed from the royalties. So it's the same. It's just it's like a career choice of Do you want to get paid for every session, or do you want royalties, or do you want a bit of both, or do you want your name on there? I'm not the kind of, well, as you can tell from the fact that I don't really, I've got no interest in putting my face on screen. I'm not really a limelight kind of guy, so the ghost gig really kind of works for me. And I've got different agreements with different people. Some of them pay royalties. If you'll see, if you look at the credits on Spotify, you can see on most tracks, there's up to, especially, well, really bad in the pop industry, like 20 people on a track writing that stuff. I've been to Nashville. I've been to writing camps where they send you to all these different buildings, and you spend a few hours with a group of people. You're all hashing out a song really fast, throwing around ideas, and then 4 hours later you're off to lunch, and then you get taken to another building, and there's another bunch of writers, and it's like a machine, all trying to get 5% on hopefully a hit. But yeah, it's I don't have a problem with ghost production, if that's kind of, it's how the industry works. Again, what I was talking about earlier with the production hat. If you look at how songwriting started, the person who writes the screenplay for the film doesn't act in the film, and they don't direct the film, and they don't produce the film, and they don't edit the film. So I think the only thing with the ghost production is when the DJ superstar took off in kind of the last decade, when record labels realized they didn't have to send a whole band with a live rig and instruments around the world on a plane. They could send one guy with a USB stick. When DJs became superstars, I think there was a little bit of an image problem, because if you've got the opinion that a DJ doesn't do much, which I don't, by the way, but if you did have that opinion, you would certainly not be happy to find out your hero didn't make the songs either. And the other thing is, those, going back to the producer thing again, DJs make fantastic producers. Every DJ I work with that I ghostwrite for, they always produce, because they're the ones stood at the decks looking at a crowd reaction live, which is the most important bit. That's the best privilege a producer can be in. That's the best position a producer can be in, is to look at the reaction live. So we get to try things like, try this version in the mix, try this at the beginning of your set, try this at the end of the set. Does this work? Do we take those chords out in the middle if it's not at the end of your set? All those kind of things. We get to try things and then see the reaction live, and they come back with the feedback of, this really works, this doesn't work. And they don't have to know how to write the songs, because they're the producer. And DJs have other skills live in terms of the actual DJing. So I think ghost production is entirely necessary in the industry, because you can't have one guy do the social media, the writing, the production, the engineering, the editing, the programming, and then fly around the world and do interviews. There's just so many facets to doing it. I mean, professionally at least, anyway. When you get to the top, it's very, very, very busy out there, and you need a team. You just absolutely need a team. Like I couldn't work without a manager. I've got a manager that he does all my uploads. He's got the miserable job of the admin side of doing the keywords and the Spotify. Sorry, not the digital store. So I'm kind of a chill artist stroke teacher type brand. I'm not very famous. I'm not trying to do that. But yeah, I enjoy my ghost gigs. I like it. So you get lots of different perspective. I do Indian music. I do dance music. I do, I've done all sorts. I'll take anything on. Well, not these days. I'm really busy, but anyway, that's rant over. What other questions we got? Sorry. That was the ghost. Biggest artist you've ghost produced for? I can't. Part of the contract is I get paid to say nothing. Sometimes I get paid less if I want credits and royalties, because then my name will go on the, the writing credits by law. If you right click on a Spotify song and hit credits, you'll see everyone who's written on the song. It's very rarely just the DJ. In fact, the DJ is usually the producer credit, because obviously, like I say, they're producer. So no, I can't say, sorry. Just kind of how it works. Some are fine with it, but I'd rather not, just in case. They have a brand to protect, and if all the brand is just a set of subconscious expectations, right? It's what someone thinks you are. Like, you guys think I'm a music teacher in the dance world space. That's kind of what we've set up here, right? So that's our kind of like subconscious agreement. I've never said that explicitly up front before you've watched my video. You don't have to come in knowing that, but you get that. That's the vibe you come across. And the same with the DJ. If someone's expectation of that DJ is that they do all their own tracks, that's fine. If they don't want to explicitly say otherwise, then that's a branding decision, and it's I have to respect the fact they don't want to reveal that. Like I say, some of them don't bother. Some of them are bothered by that, but what we got here from 007 Edgard: tips on improving song arrangement and breaking off the 16-bar loop. Trouble making songs that are just an 16-bar loop. For that, I just would be a bit less shameless of copying someone else's structure while you're learning anyway. If it's what gets your song finished, all you really need is a build and a drop, right? And then you hit repeat on the build and the drop and try and change it up a bit. And that's about it, really. I mean, you don't have to get out of the 16-bar loop. It depends on the genre. Speak to a techno producer. They'll kill you if you break out of the 8-bar loop. Depends on the genre and the drugs. The ketamine crowd don't like it being changed up too much. You got to keep them in that space, Yeah, I'm sorry if the question's this might be a little broad, but follow up your question with what genre you're in. I'll see if I can help you out a little bit. I don't mind formulaic structure, like in terms of a learning process, because your first, and this is general advice to anyone who can't finish tracks, can't start tracks, or hasn't released anything in the last 3 months, right? You just have to kind of let go of those really fastidious, almost, I'm going to call it snobbish expectations of yourself. Like, I have to be truly original in every aspect, arrangement, in chords, in rhythm, you can't do that to yourself. No, I mean, if it's your hobby and that's, the process is the entire bit of fun, and you're fine with taking a year to make a track, then this advice doesn't apply to you. I can't really speak to that, but definitely the part of growing as an artist, producer, engineer, whatever it is finishing stuff. Finishing is its own practice, and you only get there by letting go of some caveats, like thinking everything needs to be super, super, super original. That's why I think I need to print it on a t-shirt. The quote I put up a while back that said, "We didn't release the track because we finished it. The track was released." I mean, we finished the track because it was released. It's the other way around. So, I think, anyone follow Venus Theory? Mr. Grumpy Moustache? He did a great video recently about how to give up or something, I think it was called. And it was kind of give up on purpose, you know, as in know when to walk away. But I wanted to add to that message with, you walk away by hitting the release button. You upload it. You don't, if it's not finished, it doesn't matter. It does not matter, because, and this goes for all of you who are scared about your, if you're scared about sounding, I've had this a lot, you know, people who want track reviews, come back to that question as well. The reason I don't do track reviews is because most people ask, how do I make my track not sound amateur? And I say, well, it's a really unfortunately disappointing answer. You just need to not be an amateur. So the entire time you're an amateur, which is actually your entire life, no one ever really achieves perfection, do they? The only time you're not an amateur is when you're not an amateur. So it's like, if the entire time you are an amateur, everything will be amateur. So it's like you just own it, and stuff goes with that as well, like the branding expectations of an audience. If you've got 50 followers on Spotify and you sound like David Guetta, exactly like David Guetta, then something's wrong, in the sense that to the audience, they think you're a fake because it's not your music, it sounds too professional, or it could be a corporation that's formulated an act out of nowhere because no one's heard of them and suddenly they sound this professional. If you're amateur, you just own it. You just release what you have, because the other thing is everyone's striving to achieve, to sound like Eli Brown or, you know, doesn't matter who, Tool Room. And everyone's fighting in that space. If you release something that you think sounds amateur to a casual listener, that's going to sound really fresh because it sounds completely different to everything that's out there. So it'll be its own accidental advantage if you don't take it so like literally that you need to just be like someone else. You just release what you have. And the thing that happens when you just start releasing things, even if they're not finished, is if it's really good, someone will sample it and finish the track for you. Win-win, because then you get to claim the collaboration or the royalties. Or like I say, some people think it sounds really fresh and they just like it and it goes off. The one constant across every single artist I've ever met is they have never been able to call out what hit, which of their tracks was a hit. It's always the one you never expect. It's the one you never finished. It's the one you had some problem with that you never quite got right. The vocal take was off, or we forgot this mistake, or it's always the one you never think. Anyway. Yeah, 10 years. Well, that's what they say. It's the 10-year overnight success. Everyone kind of forgets the amount of time you need to work on something. The 10,000 hours rule is definitely a real thing. Because you only know someone about, like I was watching Billie Eilish long before she blew up because my manager's really good at spotting these people. Ed Sheeran he spotted on stage in a little dingy bar. My manager spotted Billie Eilish on SoundCloud with her very first song long before he told every singer that I worked with to copy Billie Eilish's social media strategy because she was absolutely killing it. They all failed. Every single vocalist I was working with at the time failed to do so, and then Billie Eilish blew up. Ed Sheeran he spotted doing rap battles with acoustic guitar. It takes a long time before they reach your threshold of attention, right? They only become famous when they're famous. And before that was 10 years of absolutely no one knowing who the hell they are. So everyone starts there. There's no shortcut, fast forward. But the fastest way to do it is definitely just release unfinished stuff. Because the fact that you release it kind of gets this monkey off your back. I hope you know that phrase, get the monkey off your back. That is kind of and then it forces you to move on because you can't do anything with the track then. It's out there in the world. And it also gives you the advantage of, back in the, people still think like the old record industry. If you released a bad track and you had a record deal, that could sink your career. Previous to 2009, 2004, probably. A bad track might sink your career, but then Steve Jobs went to all the record labels and said, "I want to do digital music with iTunes." And then suddenly we're in the online era, and now you can release a track, not only yourself via DistroKid or Ditto and all these companies. Not only can you release a track yourself, you can release fixes of your old tracks because there's that many tracks go up every day. If you release a bad one, it just disappears into the ether and people forget about it. So by releasing, you learn to finish. You kind of get into that practice. You learn to let go. You learn to move on. You listen to it again in 6 months and learn far more because you finished it instead of spending 6 months tweaking it. Because you'll have forgotten about it and have fresh ears, or you'll suddenly find some YouTube channel has uploaded it and it's got, 100,000 plays for no reason. My rants are too long. I'm taking, let's have some more questions. Best way to prepare your track for mastering. Well, if you know about the way I work, I don't master anything anyway. My tracks just go out as is. So the best way to prepare your track is just have it sound pretty mastered already. And I don't mean put a load of effects on the master bus. The best thing you can do is have your track sound mastered without anything on the master. Like this track, for example, here, right? The only things on my master are, I have this to check sub-frequencies when I'm not at the studio. That's just 80 hertz filter. It could be anywhere. This is when I want to take the bottom end off for breaks. Like that, and then kick the bottom end in. That kind of thing. And then I have my metering. And that's the track done. Like, I have this here just in case I want to adjust total level and check in mono. Very important. And that's how I'll release this track. And I also, when I ghostwrite, some of the acts that I ghostwrite for release what I give them as is, no mastering. Some of them send it to a mastering engineer, in which case I just take that and I turn it down by like 10 dB. Just so they've got plenty of headroom. But the point is, you just want it kind of almost there. You want it needs to work as a master already, because a mastering engineer can't really fix anything. The way you need to, everyone fetishizes mastering as if black art, this mystery process that's going to do some magic because they used a preset once on Ozone and it completely transformed their track by accident. But no, the thing is to think of a mastering engineer will be the last kind of 1-2%. It's not really going to make a difference to the streams of your track. It's kind of a preference of, it's just one more pair of ears to double check that you've not missed any super low frequencies because your bedroom studio doesn't go down low enough or something like that, or your headphones aren't good enough. It's like it's a double check on absolute problems, and it's kind of the last 1-2% of tweaks. They'll make it sound slightly better if you give them a really good mix, but they cannot fix or they have no control. If you think about all the control you have when you mix, like if I don't like this kick drum, I can change the kick drum, right? I can swap it out. I can EQ. I've got this distortion thing on here. I can change that. A mastering engineer has no control over any of that. They just have sometimes you'll send stems to a mastering engineer, so they might have some control over the kick. I have had Kev at Wired sometimes swaps kicks in really egregious cases, I've heard, but down at Metropolis, I've worked with him before. But most of the time, your mastering engineer is just dealing with a stereo file, or at best 5 or 6 stems, and they don't have any real control over the ratio of effects to dry, all that kind of stuff. So the amount of control you have in the mix, it's more important you just sort everything in the mix and just have it sound ready to go. It's all in the sound selection. It's not about tweaking things to make them master ready or radio ready. These terms are really old-fashioned nonsense that don't really exist. You just need it to sound already kind of there. If the mix doesn't work, a mastering engineer cannot fix it. I promise you. So don't leave it that late. You're just delaying the blame process to someone else. That's what's really going in your subconscious. You're like, oh, I can't do this, I can't hear this. I'm going to leave it for a mastering engineer. That's just you making excuses because you're just not ready yet. So get it right as you've got it. And then the mastering engineer will take it to the next level. A couple of % extra, but not. They won't change the world of your track. And it's not really going to make that much of a difference. What else have we got? People struggle to finish their music because they get hung up on, sidetracked by what they think other producers will think. Yes, exactly, yeah. I mean, one of the downfalls of EDM world is the biggest critics are not your audience. So everyone thinks what other DJs think is important. And again, you need to get rid of that kind of thought, because I've heard engineers already say, Maupe's Drugs from Amsterdam sounds terrible. It's a really badly mastered track or badly mixed track. I've heard that feedback from a lot of DJs. But you'll bet they'll still play it in the sets because it goes off. It's like, if the track is already good, none of that bit matters, because every DJ will be clamoring to put it in their sets because the track works. It doesn't matter if it's viral for some kind of gimmick reason or whatever. It's people will play it because it's already popular. So the focus needs to be on this is why I do this channel. So the focus needs to be on making the music bit, getting the track good, because the rest just kind of doesn't matter. And in extreme cases, if it goes viral before anyone picks it up or any DJ plays it, via TikTok or some other random reason, like somebody put a dog or cat video on top of it, then the record labels phone you and they say, we'd like to sign the track. Oh, by the way, can our engineer have a look at it? And we'll get it mixed and mastered for you because we think it could be better. So all that kind of gets solved for you anyway. So I really wouldn't worry too much on your ears. Just develop over time. Just concentrate on finishing. Just release. In fact, don't even finish stuff. Just release stuff, because that is finishing stuff. If all you've got is a build and a drop, press copy paste, put an intro and an outro on it, and then hit release. Go straight to DistroKid or whoever your distribution company is, and hit upload. Go. Move on to the next one, because you'll learn far more on the next track and far more from the data and feedback you'll get back from the release track than you ever will spending a year in your bedroom tweaking until you think it's perfect, which never happens, by the way. That is an infinitely disappearing horizon, like a mirage in the desert. The perfect mix. The first thing I ever got paid for was I mixed a track by a blues hip-hop artist called... what was it? What was it called? Ironweed. The Ironweed Project. It was a bizarre album. Somewhere between... I had to do kind of country guitar licks over trap and hip-hop kind of beats by a genius artist. By Annie Fakinola, he's called. He's done all sorts. He was part of Voodoo Ray and loads of other stuff. He's been around, let's put it that way. So I got asked to write and perform, and I ended up mixing the track. And I think I got paid 500 quid for the album. You know, it was one of my first ever paid gigs, which was very good for even that. But it was, you know, they knew what they were doing. They were professional guys. And it was a disaster. I didn't know what I was doing. I'd never done hip-hop before. But I was guided by a really good producer. So again, someone who's working with emotions. And they guided me in the right directions. They weren't saying, oh, you know, you need more 50 hertz in your kick drum. They would say things like, just turn the kick drum up and turn the guitar down or something like that. You know, we need this to happen in the car, or this is the crowd that's going to play it and that kind of stuff. Or a lot of them were actually pitched for TV. That was the purpose of the album. And lo and behold, a couple of years later, randomly, one of the tracks, which actually, it was almost a mistake. It had no bass line on it. It was just guitar, drums and vocal. One of the tracks got picked up for a TV series in Australia as the main theme tune. And then I get a check for 10 grand. And it's like, I thought that track sounded terrible 2 years prior. Guy called Gerald. There we go. Yes. It's not Gerald. It's someone who wrote with him. It's from the same area in Manchester. Actually, is Gerald from Manchester? I can't remember. But yes, it's part of that. They all know each other. They all go way back. It was I was working with one of them guys. Anyway, yeah. So I thought it sounded terrible, and it earned me a ton of money and became the theme tune. I think that TV series ran for 3 series as well, and we got paid every time, which is fantastic. So that was kind of my first lesson, that the sound doesn't. It's more about the emotion that the sound creates. Is the vibe right, as opposed to is the specific frequencies of the kick drum, etc. Is that right? That bit doesn't matter. It's did you get the vibe right? What the track I mixed? Can you listen to it? God, I mean, yeah. Let's see if I can find it online. It's let's see if I can find it. It's project. Oh, it's called Get a Little Dirty. It's come up. Yeah, it's online. Can you guys hear that? Is YouTube coming through? Did you hear some guitar scratching there? So this is my early mixing. And me on guitar. And a great guy on vocals called Annie. And you'll hear there's no bass part.
Gonna get a little dirty. See them crawling, their faces on the ground. My heart keeps jumping, I wanna stay around. Now they can't hear me, I
Well, that's
See them crawling, their faces on the ground. My heart keeps
that's the thing, right? It's like, yeah, it's missing a ton of bottom end, and it's actually pretty dull as well at the top, but it doesn't really matter. The vibe's great. You know, it's that's all that matters, and that was the producer's job to guide that. You know, he helped us structure it, and you know, told the singer repeat the hook here and all that kind of stuff. You know, that kind of stuff, and even went into some lyrics. And the show, it was it's not like the Get a Little Dirty bit even mattered. The show it ended up being used on was like a cross between Baywatch and CSI. It was like investigations by some beach team that did like search and rescue. I think it was called Rescue Special Ops. It's an Australian TV series. So it's not like the lyrics even made sense. I suppose you could say they were getting dirty by having to dive in the water and sand a lot, but you know. Anyway, so there you go. Doesn't matter. Like, get a good producer, I suppose, is the lesson. Do you have any templates? No. Yes and no. Yes and no on templates. I do a lot of different genres, so depending on how close I need to be to a reference, whether I'll start from scratch or not. If I'm being creative, no, I just pull. That's why I use Ableton. I just pull the drums in from another track that I know is in the same key or something like that, so I know the kick drum's going to work, all that kind of stuff. I'll pull in the lead sound or whatever from another track, because the way I work is I keep all my effects as inserts, or sendable inserts is like a rack system I've invented. Well, probably not invented, but I use it that way. So I don't have to use send effects. So then when I drag in a sound from another project, everything's on it. The automation, the effects, it's all just ready to go. So yeah, in that sense, I'm using templates. I'm kind of starting with what I already had before, if I like it. If the reference requires fresh sounds or something I've never done before, then we'll just start from scratch. So, and those take obviously a lot longer. Depends on the job and kind of what I'm doing. But the reference is always key. Wonder if you could show us how you do some vibes like Vril or Prince of Denmark. Textural reverb kicks. How specifically those dub techno chords with all the movement. I'm not familiar with this artist. Give me a moment. Let's have a listen. Do you recommend a track by either of these? Do I export tracks to a separate Ableton project for mixing? No. No, because I don't really, Teddy, I don't mix. Like, I mean, look at this kick drum here. So you can ignore the envelope follow. That's a sidechain trigger. I have distortion and, you know, that's an aesthetic preference, right? That's. I was actually using this just because I was lazy. I didn't want to create a sub part, and this Ableton drum bus thing will create a drone note for you at a sub frequency. I didn't want it too clicky because I wanted it to sound lo-fi, so I took the top end off, and then nothing on the clap apart from this is a filter for the break, which is also on the synth. So those are creative effects. You can see I've high passed. We've got like a reversey loop. Nothing on the hi-hats. There's my noise. Again, took out some highs because they probably annoy me. Or clashing with other hi-hats. Or there's my sizzle, the ride, which is truly sidechained actually, off the kick. It's not a fake sidechain. That's like a Mark Knight loop for extra busy at the last chorus, and then my synth. Ton of creative effects on there. Let's take these off. So you could argue this is pretty essential because this is all flavor. This is me just going absolutely ham with variety of sound plugins, by the way. I just love throwing if I want a really dirty sound, which isn't always appropriate in EDM, but obviously this, I was going for that filthy Benny Benassi saw wave, right? So there's nothing really going on with the synth. It's just a bit of noise and a sawtooth. Yeah, this is all just me trying to add distortion. I like that mid bump on the filters in the Tone Boosters Fix 4 are absolutely weird. I love them. Crush for drive and, well, yeah, just using that for distortion. But yeah, this is, what is all this? This is a transformer emulation. That is a broadcast limiter, but I'm not really using the limiter. Again, I'm using the amp section, the distortion, and the tape, and then reverb. So obviously the reverb's important for this particular track, but I know this isn't the best example of the best sounding track you've ever heard right now, but my process is the same across every release you'll hear of mine. If you ever like the sound of something I do, know that it wasn't mastered, and because of the ghostwriting I do, some of the people you're listening to commercially aren't mastered as well, because it will be one of mine. And the process is just sound selection. Sound selection. Get the sounds right. I spend a lot more time picking sounds than I do playing with any kind of mix things. I just don't mix, really. It's just about sound selection, vibe, and get that right. Everything else takes care of itself. I work at 0 dB as well. So the reference goes in at the top, like, you know, you take your you take your WAV, or, as well, hopefully you've got a WAV if you can get hold of one. Sorry, make a new track. So the references, preferably you get a few references. They go in at the top. Everything stays at 0. Right, the master, cover your ears. We're about to jump up in volume, but the master goes to 0, and as you can see, I've got nothing on the master other than metering plugins. In fact, let's switch to that project so you can see what went on. We search for this vocal, the baddest on the block one we did for the video. E Fridge. Oh yeah, look at the title I gave. Does that come up? I gave this one, I called it If Benassi Hadn't Met Guetta, because I didn't like what that remix was like. That's kind of what inspired me to make my own. What we're talking about down here. Yeah, I'm still technically answering Teddy's question here about mixing. I just want to point out, I don't know if you saw my little short on showing people what I did with the drums. So, you can see you got references at the top. Let's look at the drum processing. Kick drum. Nothing. This is the sidechain trigger. Nothing on the kick drum. Drums. I have a bit of stereo touch on the clap and a bit of reverb. Oh, we've got some delay feedback. Hi-hat, shaker. super, super high pass because, again, that decision is nothing to do with me. I heard the reference, had a ton of mid-space and wasn't using a lot of what I would normally call rattly percussion, which some tech house does, some doesn't. Techno uses a lot of rattly percussion as well, you know, for pace. This just had very, very, this is just like this is fizzy pace, this is really high. So all the lows come out of that shaker. As you can see, hi-hat is just the hi-hat. The length of the hi-hat is very important. You see, I've actually layered 2 here, and that length is, well, it actually depends on the sample, but I think I have cut that on the sampler. But I've called these bits. So this is me just playing around with. This is for the break, by the way. Got a tape delay. A terrible reverb, which is terrible on purpose, called the Rat Shack, which is an emulation of an old cheap kind of spring thing. I'm throwing some bits into that. That's a freebie as well. If you want great tape delay, just go with variety of sound. What's up here? There's our top loop. There's nothing on the top loop. Last drop pickup. Again, picking my hi-hat pace. I want more on the, that's what we call a 3/4. Instead of 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4, it's a 3 4 3 4 3 4 3 4. Depends on where you want, which side of the beat you want your groove on. And because this was very chunky, I didn't want to go. See how that changes the bounce. So, build snare. Nothing on the builds. Oh, no, yeah, nothing on the snare. That sounds like a 909 sample. I can tell you that's probably from the Thomas Penton pack. Not that it matters. Well, you saw my sound tutorial on this. We're going to go into processing. Here's a sidechain. I've actually got 2 sidechains. That was just trial and error, trying to get it out the way of that really big kick that I chose. We are high pass because the sub is doing the bottom actual, and we do that. So I'll talk about this in the bass processing video next week, but the principle is you just separate off your sub frequencies. This matters, depends on the key you're in, depends on what frequency you need to pick, because you want to get the second harmonic upwards on your bass part and then leave the bottom harmonic to the sub sine wave. You'll see that's just a sine wave, nothing on it at all. Choose your release carefully depending on your groove, tempo and frequency of the key of your track. So there's going to be lots on the leads because this is, oh, actually no, that's just got reverb. Again, I gave these patches away in the Tech House video. Oh, that's a filter. Side chains, nothing else on that. This is my smudger, which is just high pass into a reverb. A bit of delay as well mixed in. Everything just turns up on one knob. Obviously, you only want reverb on the sine wave. Do anything else to a sine wave and it's no longer a sine wave. What's this? This is the...
Girl, gon' make that booty pop like you the baddest on the block. Yeah, the party never stop. Drinking till my body drop.
Vocally sidechained. I have I made a plugin called the Dirt Master 4000 for just doing things to vocals.
Girl, go make that booty.
So I've got vinyl noise, dynamic noise,
Girl, go make that booty pop like you the baddest on the block. Yeah, the party.
sample rate reduction.
Girl, go make that booty pop like you the baddest.
This is all just with Ableton's built-in tape and bit reduction thing.
Girl, go make that booty pop like you the baddest on the block. Yeah, the party.
That's just for filth, extra filth. Vocal was too clean. Didn't want that. Needed it to sound a lot more sampled than it was. But again, this is not a mix tip that I would give generally, because this is the context of the vibe of the emotion of the track, right? It's not something you do every time. In fact, I've not used this plugin for years until I decided to throw it on this track. I actually forgot I made this.
Girl, go make that
We have Magic Dice Reverb.
Girl, go make that booty pop like you the baddest on the block.
That's kind of just providing width, really.
Girl, go.
Again, checking mono if you're tempted by being like, if you like width, always checking mono. And that's it. There's nothing on the master here. Oh, yeah, I did throw a limiter on this one. All right, and then we turn the limiter off in the drop, right? Yeah. So in the drops, there's nothing on the mix. I've got some master automation on the volume. That's it. That's what I mean by I don't mix. I make sure everything sounds right first, and then obviously you tidy up your low end as best you can. Make sure your hi-hats aren't creeping into the sub-frequencies, things like that. Things you just... Oh, here's our feedback again. This is what I love about tape delay. It will feed back on itself. And then you can do things like that. So I've got all that automated in the break here. The echo is actually on the clap. Hear the feedback on the clap now. I'm actually missing a clap. I've just realised my clap's gone missing. What happened here? Replace. Oh, I moved the sample around. My bad, my bad. That didn't drop then. My clap was wrong. There we go. I did a little false drop at the end there. Yeah, you can see literally how many lanes of automation made that delay do its thing. So I spend a lot more on sound design and sound selection and creative aesthetic stuff more than I do on any kind of actual engineering type, etc, etc. But hey Oscar, hello. Yes, it's all about picking the sounds. Why master track is above 0 dB, Teddy? It doesn't make a difference. Because my attitude towards clipping is I would rather clip a drum peak than limit it. If it's important to, if that transient is really important to the groove, then I'll do it that way around. I'll let the as long as my actual main level isn't clipping, the what we call the RMS, the you'll hear it distort when it does. If it distorts badly, then you either need to just turn it down, or any distortion is just a great example of it's an indicator that something's wrong in your mix. So if it distorts audibly in a really egregious way that's not planned, like if you're not Valentino Khan, you don't want to go that hard, then you need to go to your mix and find out what's making everything distort if you need to be at that level. And it's just a case of kind of going back and tidying things up. But it's usually the fact that the sound is wrong. You just need to swap sounds around. Would you prefer a Pro C from FabFilter emulation API? Oh no. If you saw my Waves video, I spent over $10,000 on UAD plugins when I now got rid of every single one of them. And it's no accident that I make a lot more electronic music these days than I used to. That stuff was great when I used to mix like rock bands and things. It's a lot of fun to use, and their emulations are fantastic. I obviously disagreed with the DSP ransom that they were charging, a la Pro Tools. Same business model as old Pro Tools was, holding people to ransom by making them run everything on the DSP, when in fact it was just Windows code. So I disagreed with all that, but yeah, the plugins themselves are fantastic. I prefer Slate. Slate came in though and embarrassed them at their own game. Actually made better plugins than UAD in a lot of cases, and charged a lot less, and without the hardware tie. So I swapped to Slate and ditched all $10,000 worth of my UADs. Actually stopped using them. And then Slate went subscription, to my chagrin. But I own the perma licenses to the plugins on the Slate, so I don't have to pay for the subscription. And you can still do that, by the way, if you really like Slate. You can buy them individually. They just put it right at the bottom of the page. To answer your question a bit more broadly, I don't find a lot of analog emulation is appropriate in dance music. It depends on the vibe you're going for. If you want super modern, hi-fi, clean kind of, a lot of that stuff just kind of really adds too much distortion, that gives you more distortion downstream, and it becomes a problem. So I don't tend to use a lot of, like you saw on that Benny Benassi track kind of vibe I was going for earlier. I put lots of distortion on the saw wave because that was supposed to be filthy, but I'd never probably use it on the master. But in general, I just don't like compressors. I don't like limiters. I don't use them. And I think a lot more people need to realize that, because just because there's a compressor that exists that everyone covets doesn't mean it's appropriate for your music. Like the output of this synthesizer, if we take away our sidechain, right, the output of that synthesizer is not dynamic. It's not a real bass player. It's not playing different velocities every time. It's not a real drummer that's playing the snare drum differently every time. I don't need to tame any dynamics there. Unless you already know what you're doing and you understand how you can use a compressor for flavor and what that compressor is really doing, and you know how to work a compressor already, that is the only reason I would use a compressor, is for like kind of flavor. But most sources of sound, like your kick drum samples, your snares, your hi-hats, your basses, your leads, they all come from things that are not dynamic. So squishing the dynamics that aren't already there just gets you a worse sound, like every time. I've probably not used a compressor on a kick drum for 5, 6, 7 years now. I'd love for people to just really get out of that mindset that some fancy limiter or something's going to solve their problems. I don't even have one. like this is a freebie. This is Limiter 6 by what became Tokyo Dawn, right? Initially it was by Vladislav, a Russian coder. Well, it still is Vladislav, but he became part of Tokyo Dawn. I don't know if he founded it or I think the Mollet compressor is his as well. Fantastic coder. He's wrote some great white papers on the effects of high sample rates and digital audio in general, which are worth a read if you're a geek. But yeah, that's a freebie. So yeah, this UAD that or API this or Pultec blah blah blah. It's just if it's personal preference for the flavor, fine, but it's got nothing to do with getting you a finished track or B a better track or C any more streams on a track. It's got nothing to do with any of that. That's just individual preference and flavor. It's nothing like that at all. Favorite Ross was it Rossovich? Favorite kicks and hats? I don't have any favorites because it all depends on the reference. So over 15 years of making music, there's a lot of sample packs in here. And then what I do is I have this plugin called XO. You'll see me if you've tuned into a live stream before. What I do is I have the reference playing above. This groups them all by similar sound. Sorry for your ears there. Let me turn down. And I'll just pick it that way, by ear. So when you get enough samples, you just tend to... So I don't really know which ones I'm picking. I mean, for example, let's look at the clap. Right, so this clap that I happen to like is from an old Vandalism pack called... Oh, where's it gone? There it is. Vandalism Ultra Moonbaton Element. So it's not even a EDM genre, it's Moonbaton, which is like a form of reggaeton. I don't know if you know about reggae music, ragga, etc., etc. But yeah, reggaeton, Moonbaton, that's that clap. So, but I mean, listen to it. It sounds like what? Kind of a 909? There's nothing super special about that. I'm just picking it as long as it's... I need a certain amount of crack for the backbeat of this track, right? Let's audition some different claps and just feel how it changes the groove. Alright, so we've gone to a more clicky. This is kind of trappy. Not appropriate. Too soft. Too sloppy. That's alright. That's alright. Yeah. That's a no. Oh, that was good. Might be a bit bright. Actual clicks, no. Maybe there's a layer. Yeah, sloppy in a good way. But, like, that decision took 10 minutes initially. Like, this clap is not... obviously, I would have spent probably a lot more time on the kick. What is the kick? Noise kick? I don't know where that's from. Is that just a... that's a process. I've no idea where that's come from. So it could be a... did Noisy put out a pack ever? I don't think they did. Noisia? Noise? Who knows? Don't know where the kick's from. But again, it's an aesthetic choice. It's like... let's go through and, change the kicks. It'd be the same thing. You find the one. One thing to consider with kicks, I suppose it's a bit engineering, is I'm looking for. I mean, I can hear this because my monitoring and my headphones are good. HD25s for the win. I might look at this versus the reference, but only if I'm in the same key, right? Because if the fundamental of this, I'm looking for a few things. If you saw my video on tuning kicks, you need to understand how kicks behave with the whole descending pitch thing. Well, some of them have anyway. So I know this kick is what's called a diver kick. It's constantly diving in pitch. It's going boo, 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 boo. So it has no pitch. It's not settling anywhere. So all I'm doing is making sure the super lows don't affect the key of the track I'm in, we were in E, weren't we? So yeah, we're in E Frisian. So E's down at let me get to the sub. He's about 39 hertz, isn't it? I think, if I remember rightly, 41. So I just need to make sure I'm not messing that up. So that would be a little bit of the decision behind picking the kick. It's another reason I don't have to process the kick. The other thing I'm listening for, obviously, is the smack at the top. Does it work in the context of mostly the bass? Absolutely. So a kick that was softer than that in terms of the thud, regardless of its sub-content, I would choose another one because I need that. I need it to be kind of smacky, right? So again, there's no... I couldn't recommend to you like a go-to... I know the Mark Knight pack is great. I've found... I do remember there's a few times I've gone back to a project and gone, oh, I really liked that kick. What was it? And it was from the Mark Knight pack, I think, volume 4. So I know that one's a banker. It's safe, but the premise is use your ears and learn. Just get better at matching. Just listen to the reference and pick things. People do not reference enough. The reference needs to go in before the track starts, and you need to listen to it at least every 20 minutes. If you spend more than 20 minutes on your own track, it's going to sound terrible because your ears will have settled to whatever your current track is sounding like, which is probably not finished. So you need that reference up there to reset your ears every 20 minutes at least. Excuse me, I need some water. I've been ranting for too long. But did you hear what I mean about the claps? It's just kind of, it's whatever, right? It's what takes your fancy. There's no, oh, this is great. This is a great clap. This isn't a great clap. It either works or it doesn't in the context of your track. And that takes time. I'm not going to pretend that's easy. That's from years and years and years and years of listening to other tracks and going, oh, I can recognize that's a 909 or blah, 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 blah. Or I can hear that clap is bright and short. I can hear that clap is early on the beat or late after the kick. Or I can hear that clap as a sloppy build-up, that kind of thing, as opposed to a sharp attack or whatever, excuse the onomatopoeias. But it's just, as soon as your ears become, able to listen for those kind of things, everything kind of slots into place. You just kind of pick, just based on sound appropriateness, and then you move away from the engineering thing of, I commented recently on who was talking about layering kicks, and that's it's always a no for me. I commented on someone's channel on the Tool Room. I think it was on the Tool Room channel. Hi, Sean. More distortion, more techno. More edge, more punk. You're right. Yes. Oh, yes, Teddy. Always reference. That's the key to everything. Because the other thing is, I can't presume everyone's got the listening environment I have, right? I've got the privilege of, I've got a home setup with a little pair of KRK VXT6s. But if you see my room, more importantly, I have Real Traps panels absolutely everywhere. They're absorption panels, and they're not foam either. They're the proper stuff. They're like rock wool, and they have boundary mass in them as well. So they're not like foam pads, which I don't really like foam at all. I don't think it works. So I have lots of these sound panels up in my house, in my home setup. But even then, I don't really rely on that setup for super low frequencies because I don't have a sub. So I go to my HD25 headphones for those. And I mostly try to work in mono anyway, so I'm not too bothered about stereo separation. Not for dance music. For other things, yes, but not for dance music. I don't bother about stereo. So, you know, the whole headphone argument about not being able to hear in stereo on headphones, because headphones aren't stereo, if you didn't know. Headphones are binaural, but technicalities aside, I'm not, you know, that thing doesn't affect me. And then I've got an actual studio space with a full floating room. It's floating on rubber pads. There's several feet of rock wool in every corner of every wall, and that's where my Adams are. I've got Adam monitors and a dedicated sub, and it's beautiful. And I get to listen to things there and do some really critical judgments if I need to. But that room has become less and less important over time as the skills develop. So, can you explain, is there any issue switching polarity on a channel like you can do? Good Hertz Studio Can VST. I understand switching polarity on channels. You mean headphone channels? Because that says Studio Can. Is that a headphone? I don't know, but I don't know the plugin. Sorry. What's the context there? Do I have any hardware? I only have... I love hardware, but it's so slow. I mean, if that's your environment, if you have... you know, some people are fast on hardware. I'm not. So I have a Roland... what is this? Roland Phantom X8 from many years ago. I use that for the piano action when I want to play. Shall we say play properly? If I need an actual performance, I'm going to use my Roland because I love the action on Rolands. So I've got my Roland for that, but that's on MIDI only. That's not. I don't use the sounds on it. As far back as early 2000s, when I used to have I remember I got a loan out when I was a student. When they let students get loans out, I got a Korg Triton, the first Korg Triton with the touchscreen. It was a revelation. I think it was about £3,000. The shop, which would then end up letting me work there to pay it off. It was like a trap. The shop let me get finance on it, so I managed to get a £3,000 loan to buy this synthesizer. And then Spectrasonics released Atmosphere, the one before Omnisphere. So this is how old we're talking about. I think the installation came in about 8 CDs. It was huge for the time. And I heard the string patch on Omnisphere. I think it was called Atmosphere. It was called Adagio. So my initial reaction was obviously to play Adagio for strings. Great piece, Samuel Barber. I played that and I had an eargasm, and I looked over and it said it was using 300 megs of RAM. I was like, oh my God. Because I knew my Korg Triton, which I'd spent £3,000 on, that had, I think, 16 megabytes of RAM for its entire sound set, not just the string patch. And it sounded so good, I knew from then onwards, hardware would never sound as good as software. And I just stopped buying stuff. So, as for actual hardware gear like compressors, no, I don't. I work too fast to be able to patch things in and out. And also, I like to be able to recall sessions. Like, even one of the first artists I ever worked with phoned me up and said, do you still have such and such a thing? It was a brass part from a song we did about probably 10 years ago. And I managed to find it because I still have the VST. And because I don't use hardware effects, I was able to send him the part that we... So I love to be able to recall old stuff. And hardware kind of makes that impossible. So... it's a speed thing, and it's a practical thing, but I do fetishize the hardware. I mean, I'd love a real 1176 sat there, or a Pultec, or hell, a Fairchild. That'd be lovely. If I could fit one in the house, but nope, no hardware effects. Oh. I keep thinking there's police in the background. That's my tape delay going off. What do you think of Casio CZ101 phase? Now that's a type of synthesis, Sean, that I've not gone into yet. I've done a video on synthesis types, but the Casio's a legend, and it turns out not many synths do. It's called phase distortion synthesis, and that Casio CZ patch, which I think you can find it in Rave Generator actually as well, but as a sample, obviously. Yeah, Casio's a classic. If you want to make 90s sounding organ things, other than the M1, obviously the cheap sounding organ that became a legendary sound, that's the Casio CZ101. I think is it Kevin McKay's been using it recently? Definitely sounds like a CZ101. Anyway, yeah. Great synth. Because up until then, Casio were just a Yamaha like rip-off company. They were just copying Yamaha, and then I think out of sheer desperation, trying to make their sounds better because they couldn't afford to do the same methods as Yamaha, they stumbled upon phase distortion synthesis and absolutely created a legend. Yeah, XO, is it a good investment? I mean, when you've got as many samples as I have, it's an absolute no-brainer. I don't think I paid full price for it. I think I waited for a sale still. But, yeah. I'm not sure what it goes for these days. I got that ages ago. Absolutely worth investment if you're, if you value speeding up your workflow. It's a bit like, I see it like, I know, White Sea Studio has been talking about this recently, but the whole, I don't know if you know this, but the way the brain works is it does prioritize your vision. So there's a thing called the McGurk effect. Is its official name, I think. So you can see, if you watch someone saying a word, you'll already make a presumption about what the word is, even if the audio track that's playing is completely different to what the visual is. You'll be fooled, your ears will be fooled into hearing a different word, as long as you're looking at the lips, right? As soon as you close your eyes, you hear the correct word. So, what that tells you is you've got to be careful about looking at things like meters and EQ curves. I know Dan Worrell's talked about this as well. And I see the XO plugin like that. You're not looking at names or file sizes or, You know, is it from Mark Knight? Is it from Kashmir? Is it from such and such a reputable... Like, I used to think Vengeance stuff sounded... Well, initially I thought it sounded great because I was an amateur, and then 10 years later you listen back on Vengeance demos and you think, oh God, they sound terrible. But I've just looked, and because I randomly picked a clap I liked, I've used a Vengeance clap in this song. And hooray, you know. Would I have done that? Would I have actually gone to the Vengeance pack and found it that way? Unlikely. So I think XO is good for that. It's kind of like blind. It's just a blind listening test. You don't have to know where the samples are from. And it groups them all neatly for you, which again is a workflow speed up. It's a massive workflow speed up. So. And you can make cartoon sound effects with it like that. Record that back in. You could score a cartoon. But yeah, no, seriously, I think it's a great investment. That your Ableton 11 sending your CPU through the roof. I'm currently on 5900 HX AMD, and it's usually fine. As long as you get something reasonably recent with lots of multi-threading. It doesn't even have to be recent, to be honest. As long as it's got, I would say... what CPU do you have right now? Hatchet Harry. Have any tips on how to get in contact with labels? Don't. Answer me this. Why do you want to get in contact with a label? This comes back to the track feedback thing I was talking about earlier. Why I don't do track feedback. Because there's going to be a million other factors that affect your success other than the track itself. The track is about, I'm going to say 5% of your output. Oh, you're on a 2012 iMac. Ouch. Get an M1. I mean, I'm not a Mac guy, but my God, they're powerful. Get a new Mac Mini. In terms of power, probably best bang for the buck. Less flexible in terms of, you won't have as much freeware available, which is something I rely on. So I use Windows for that reason. That's a deliberate decision. Also, you just never know when Apple are going to screw you with some new policy that disables, I know recently they stopped, if you watch Lewis Rossman, the repair guy, they stopped letting sleep sensors be repaired under warranty. So that means now, if you want your data back on a dead Mac, they'll just probably try and sell you a new Mac. And they'll tell you your data isn't even recoverable. But they're very powerful. How do I process a one-take vocal stem? Well, massively depends on the vocal. By using my ears is how I process it. There's no... Unfortunately, you're on the wrong channel for blanket advice about, oh, I always cut at 400 and blah, blah. None of that. Anyone that ever tells you absolute numbers on something, unsubscribe. Run away. There's never, ever, like, you see them on Instagram all the time, those one-page pro vocal chain things. Boost 12K for air and reduce 200 hertz for blah blah blah. It's just like it's all nonsense. It depends on the key, depends on the key of your track, depends on what the vocal contains already, depends on what you need. Like, I mean, another route I could have gone with this vocal is really deliberately like telephone.
Girl, gon' make that booty pop like you the baddest on the block. Yeah, the party never stop. You can tell my body drop. Girl, gon' make that booty pop like you the baddest on the block. Like you the baddest.
Why not, right? It's another decision. Is it something I do with every vocal? Nah. It's just because I think maybe a telephone-like sound would be cool right now. The only thing I generally do is, again, when your ears develop, you'll be able to tell whether the vocal is already compressed or not. So you'll know whether you need to add a compressor, because or you might not need. You might like the fact that it's really dynamic, and therefore, again, you'll be able to recognize that. If you can recognize the vocal has too many S's popping out of your hi-hats, then that's when you need a de-esser, obviously. I recommend TDR Nova, the dynamic EQ for that. It's really good. But everyone's got a de-esser now, so you've probably got that solved already. Yeah, I mean, I could have gone really wet with this vocal. You know, my go-to reverb is always going to be sorry, where's my effects racks? So Tal reverb.
Girl, gon' make that booty pop like you the baddest on the block. Yeah, the party never stop. You can tell my body drop. Girl, gon' make that booty pop like you the baddest on the block. Like you the baddest on the block.
Like you the baddest on the block.
Another way I could have done it. But I went super dry with like this thing by Magic Dice.
Girl, gon' make that booty pop like you the baddest.
Depends on the atmosphere of the track, right? I had a lot of reverb on the leads, so I thought the vocal would be a better contrast dry. It's probably one of the decisions. So again, there's no blanket advice I could give you on how I would process the vocal. In general, basically, you need to recognize, is it too dynamic? Therefore, does it need a bit of a squash with the dynamics? Check for low frequencies, like leaking through. In which case, you know, you want to chop the bottom off like this. This here is obviously to stop this vocal clashing with the hi-hat groove. And this isn't a pop vocal, right? This isn't up front and center. This is more like another instrument. It's like a sample. So I'm not interested in this vocal being super, super, super audible in terms of diction.
Girl, gon' make that booty pop like.
Yeah, it's just, these are all artistic decisions. I have no, I don't do the same thing every time to any vocal. You need to recognize how the vocal has already been processed on splice. You need to recognize if it's already compressed, if it's already doubled, like, you know, if there's more than one vocal in there. You need to recognize if it's got harmonies, which case you're going to struggle putting chords to it. You need to recognize, has it already got reverb on there, in which case you're going to struggle to change the vibe because the flavor of the reverb can't be undone. Well, there are AI tools getting there now which can remove reverb quite convincingly. But things like that, it's just all those decisions. You need to know what do you need in the track, and what are you working with. Splice is all over the place. Obviously, it's there's amateurs uploading, there's professionals uploading, and there's almost all of them get the key wrong. I was actually thinking about starting a series called The Scale Police, because I found so many vocals recently that were labeled in the wrong keys. I wondered if I could do like a 30-second video just saying, by the way, such and such a deep house vocal pack is in D minor, not whatever it says it is, that kind of thing. I don't know if that would be useful to people. But yeah, I came across quite a few recently which were labeled completely wrong. But yeah, the splice is all over the place. In a good way, you know, there's some absolute gems on there. Oh yeah, the other thing, I don't think this is the original pitch of the vocal. Let me just check. I've gone for the, you know, the chipmunk.
Girl, gon' make that booty pop like.
Yeah, this was the original.
Girl, gon' make that booty pop like you the best.
So I went.
Girl, gon' make that booty pop like you the baddest on the block.
And then I did the opposite, I think, for one of the ends. Pitch it down. Make sure there's no formant correction on, so you get the effect.
Girl, gon' make that booty.
If you put formant correction on,
Girl, gon' make that booty pop.
it's different.
Girl, gon' make that booty pop.
Let's do the extreme here.
Girl, gon' make that booty pop like you the baddest on the block.
So that's the stretching algorithm doing its best to make it sound like the original tone of the original vocalist.
Girl, gon' make that booty pop like you the baddest on the.
By keeping what's called the formants in place, which is kind of like the harmonic relationship. If you let the harmonic relationship get messed up,
Girl, gon' make that booty pop like you the.
you get the chipmunk, right? And the opposite way down, we get Darth Vader.
Girl, gon' make that booty pop.
Or
Girl, gon' make that booty pop like you the baddest on the block.
so I deliberately let the formants get messed up.
Girl, gon' make that booty pop.
Yeah, but again, not a general thing I do to every vocal. That's I just thought that sounded cooler than the pitch it was at. That's because it's appropriate for the genre, right? Tech house loves to mess with its samples. If you're going to add a sample to a tech house track, you don't want it to be kind of sounding too boring or stock. It's all about adding interest, right? So mixed in key, no. Mixed in key gets it wrong 25% of the time. Although if you've got no other options, I mean, you have to, right? Yeah, that's why I did that little rant on the Tech House video about DJ software. Mixed in key was the best of the bunch, I think, but its best was 75% accuracy. And again, it only does major and minor. I've heard vocals and splice in Lydian, in Mixolydian, in Frisian, in Dorian. And mixed in key will have no idea what to do with those. Do I sidechain bass? Yes. Yeah, we went over that earlier, Glory Wave, but yeah, I'll show you quickly. So, yeah. This is literally the only thing I sidechain for an engineering thing. Everything else is aesthetic on the, whether you want the pump effect or not and how much. But the only time you need to sidechain is to get your sub out of the way of the kick sub. Yeah, so I split the bass into two. I'll show you. I've got so the sub, which is down here. This is doing the lowest octave. Again, this will depend on what key you're in. Just a sine wave, and I've picked my release appropriately, so it's audible. And then we sidechain the sub a bit longer. Depends on the length of your kick drum again. The good thing about STFU as a sidechain effect is, here's a really simple tip. You can put STFU on your kick just so you can see the waveform. Just put it in any kind of full shape like this, and then play my kick. So we know the kick is this length, right? And then I can put that on my, obviously the kick isn't that length at every frequency. That's the lowest frequencies. It's going to be, that's your worst case scenario. The kick is that long. So it's like just past the halfway line. Then on my sub, we can choose to go, obviously you do this by ear, preferably at 0 dB, so you can see how the master handles this, right? Again, I've got nothing on the master. So we go to 0 and we check, does the kick die when the sub is in. No, so we're safe, we're good, right? Watch what happens when I take the sidechain off the sub. Disaster. It's farting away there, so we don't want that. And then this is the reason I split the bass. So we know we're in E for this track, right? E, which you can measure on span. So about 41 hertz is going to be our sub note. That means 82 hertz is the next harmonic of the bass. So I'm going to high pass filter before 82 hertz, but above 41. So then our main bass sound is free. And then we don't need anywhere near as big a sidechain on the upper bass because that needs to be a little bit more audible than the sub. And you can see I ended up adding an extra. You ever seen the plug-in track spacer? I'm doing the free version of track spacer here. This is a little Ableton trick. I'm basically just dipping an EQ that's triggered from the kick drum. That's all it is. You take an envelope follower and you map. Excuse me. You map the envelope follower to your EQ. The EQ started on the kick, so I could see what frequencies were going to be the most problematic. And then, yeah, so this has effectively got two side chains on it. This is all just by ear. This isn't something I do on every track. It's probably something to do with it all being all the way down in E. Because, you know, the lower a frequency is, the longer the waveform is. It takes further time in physical distance to become audible through physical air. So lower kicks need a lot. Lower key tracks need a lot more time for the bass frequencies to develop. So I tend to find I need more severe sidechaining on lower key tracks than I do on higher key tracks. So, for example, if this was in A, you might find I'd never had to do this. So it's not something I just recommend blanket that you put like two side chains and everything. But the principle is you can have a longer sidechain on the sub, and then your upper bass is a bit more freedom to do. You just want it out of the way of the thud of the kick, then not the sub of the kick, because your upper bass is no longer in the sub frequencies, and you kind of tune that by ear. And again, testing at 0 whether everything will sound fine and behave. And if you can get that right, that's the foundation of your track done. Everything else should sit on top nice. So, hello, who we got? Dolly. Oh, hey, Dolly, you good? Yeah, in the rap world, sometimes there's like two schools of thought on that. I mean, in the rap world, they don't mind, depending on, like in grime. If I was making a grime track, I wouldn't be sidechaining the kick, the 808. I'd actually want that distortion. I'd want that to be dying. Obviously, it would sound very different with a rap, like an 808 bass. The distortion would sound different, but yeah, you probably wouldn't sidechain that because you deliberately want that problem. Again, everything in context of the vibe of the track. Again, even in EDM world, if you listen to Valentino Khan, right? How distorted was that? What was the track called again? He did a couple. What was his big one? Oh, Deep Down Low. Deep Down Low. Deep Down Low. Deep Down Low. Valentino Card. That thing sounds disgusting in a good way. That kick is dying. Again, not easy to do, but it's a deliberate decision. Probably one of the more hip-hop sounding EDM tracks, in a way. But yeah, so it's not, again, not necessarily a guarantee. I know I said I always sidechain the sub, but it really depends. Most of the time, I'll say 98% of the time, yes. Separate the sub off, recognize what key you're in, understand how long the sub has to be versus the kick drum. And the other thing you can do as well, which I always do, listen to your track and listen to your reference like this. I guarantee you'll hear things you didn't know, because especially if your monitoring environment isn't great and doesn't go very low, this will at least highlight some of that without it being masked by the upper frequencies. And what we're listening for is, can we hear the thud of the kick and the bass independently? Is it still danceable? Can we dance to that groove, or is it a mess? Or is the sub inaudible? Is it just kick? And if you've got a very long kick, that's fine. You know, you just need to pay attention. Again, it's all versus the reference track. What's the reference doing? So what did I have up here? This is going to be the Noizu. Let's listen to theirs. Below 80. They've got a bit more sub than me, but the groove is fine, right? The groove's there. So always check that. Again, your groove is paramount. That's what you're looking for. It's not about volume or frequencies or mastering or levels or limiting, or it's all in service to, can people dance to this? And when you start making tracks in your bedroom, you forget that. But dancing is really important. If you yourself can't dance, try. Start to dance in your room to your own, well, to your favorite tracks first, and figure out what moves your feet, your bum, your shoulders, your head. Seriously. Start paying attention to what makes your body want to move. You might have to have a couple of drinks to loosen yourself up. But start to make some notes on what your favorite tracks do to your body, because those are the things you need to pay attention to. And then you can translate that into this digital world, right? You can say, when the clap comes in slightly early, it makes my shoulders move forward because the beat's being pushed ahead of time. Or when the hi-hats are late, or when the hi-hats are really long, it makes my fist go up and do the pump thing, or, you know, it's just like, you can see how different people, like, how guys dance differently to girls. That's a factor as well. And, you know, swing is a part of that. You have to recognize all of that. And all of this is in service to that. Recognizing what makes your dance music dance music. Very hard, very easy to forget when you're a bedroom producer. And especially if you use the word producer. Because then you stop being a musician. And you're making sounds at that point that don't mean anything. Yes, mono is extremely important, especially at the low end. If you ever have the privilege of being released on vinyl, stereo in the low end is a massive no-no. Because it'll make the needle skip the groove. But in general, it's just a bad idea, because phase does weird things to our ears at low frequencies. It'll start sounding like it's behind your head, and then suddenly the bottom of your groove, again, it's a groove thing, right? So the bottom end of your groove is now behind your head because the waveform is longer than your ears are further apart. If this makes sense. You know, your ear's distance is what can judge stereo. If the bass waveform is longer than the distance between your ears, and there's a phase problem, weird things start happening, and it's just not good. Yeah, you're correct, Dully. I always check in mono. I mean, I practically make in mono. You're never gonna. None of these tracks are panned. None of them. This is all down the middle. Obviously, the reverbs I've added will be stereo, but I always check it. I've heard so many big dance leads recently that completely fold in mono, and if you don't know for sure that the club you're going to play on is in stereo and a good system at that, it's a massive risk to go super wide. Obviously, I've destroyed the mix recently because I turned the reverb up, but I've made that reverb deliberately mono so it survives that section because the reverb is really important. I put the reverb through the sidechain as well. Reverb was all part of that. I have had a mastering engineer tell me my sounds were too mono. And before now, so I might go a bit too far with it, but better safe than sorry for club music, in my opinion. It's not a bad practice to have at all. Better bass line when using presets. How would you do that? What genre, Thomas? What genre? Grant thought my track was the MLP. Well, obviously I based this one on I based the vibe on it's somewhere between Noizu and Mau P, because that's what the video was about, right? So, but yeah, when you get the principles right, it's no accident I've come out sounding like a track that I've not heard. That's happened before. I once did a ghost write for a DJ who asked me to write a trance riff, and just from making the first riff I came up with from principles alone happened to be a trance riff that had already been done like a few years prior. And I swear I'd never heard the track before, but it's just because I was working on the same principles. I happen to write the same. I feel sorry for Ed Sheeran in that sense. He's even more limited in the pop world. There's only so many melodies left he can write now. I'm so glad he won that court case. It was very dangerous. If someone's worried about your track being mono for mastering, well, if that was your deliberate decision, then find another mastering engineer that understands. Or, if you do want some width on your track and you don't want to sacrifice mono, look at the bass here. You can use what's called Haar's delay effect. So this is just this is an echo. You want this to be below 30 milliseconds. I'll put it above so you can hear what's going on. Right, so it's just literally a repeat. Obviously, I have some bass frequencies removed. You want this below 30. Again, you just tune this by ear. And you don't want it too loud. And what Stereo Touch does is it has one echo in one ear, and then the other echo is out of phase in the other ear. So you get a nice stereo effect but it's only on the echo. Because then when you cancel in mono, sound is unchanged. Let me turn this on and off. See, not affecting it at all. So that's a nice, safe way of adding, getting a little bit of width for the headphone users. Again, you don't want to go too far with it. But I prefer Stereo Touch over the Wider plugin by Infected Mushroom. Wider seems to do weird things to certain sounds. It's still mono compatible, but the width, the phase distortion they've used to do the width is a lot less kind of cleaner, in my opinion. Anyway, but it's still it's also a mono compatible option. Ozone Imager as well is a pretty good one, but I've always loved Voxengo. It's all you need. It's nice and simple. Half delays go back decades. We've always used them. Very effective. Yep, high pass filters mess with phase. Dan has taught us this. I already knew, but if you don't watch Dan Worrell, watch Dan Worrell. Do I sing? No. I used to be the lead singer of a band, like in way back. Not a famous band or anything. We wanted to be. Our heroes were a semi-local band called Paradise Lost. They were like a goth metal thing. So I played. It was the saddest sight ever. I played keyboards and sang before I learned how to play guitar eventually. I can sing in pitch. Like I have a developed ear. I could sing you in E now because we've just been listening to something in E. Right. So I've got pitch. Am I good to listen to as a vocalist? Yeah. No. I've just never trained. Never trained at being, a performer properly. I could play guitar live pretty well, keys live pretty well. Vocals, I'd have to do a lot of training to get good, I think. I don't know what my the problem is being Northern English. If you sing in your natural accent when you're from up north, it's pretty terrible. I could do like a Northern guy covers band and probably be pretty successful with like a comedy act. I'd have to pay licensing fees in covers though. EQ Curve Analyzer is a Boss free plugin that shows you effects other plugins have on the sound. Yeah, Plugin Doctor is the same. Actually, well, Plugin Doctor's not free. Yeah. EQ Curve Analyzer. You have to be careful with EQ Curve Analyzers though, because if there's any non-linear properties like other than just the EQ curves, if there's like saturation in there at all, which especially analog model EQs are going to have, it's not just going to be the curves, then that just breaks the graph. It doesn't work. It'll show you something that's not true. Yeah, that'll only work on purely pure EQs. The EQ Curve Analyzer. Plugin Doctor is great for showing you the non-linear analysis as well. It's not even that dear if you want to buy it. You see Dan Worrell use that again. For bass rhythms, do I always start with 16th notes? Yeah, so if you're brand new at this, I don't start with... Let's loop this section, shall we? I don't literally start with... Let's do something like that. I don't literally start with that. But I have my grid on 16th, yes, because unless you're at much slower tempos, like you'll see the guys down at 80 BPM making trap, 60, whatever, all the stuff down there, or up at 140 if they're going to do it the other way around. Instead of working at 70 BPM, they might work at 140 and then treat it like half time. You'll see them subdivide the grid to 32 sometimes if they want, especially those hi-hat rhythms they use. But in general, you don't find rhythms faster than 16ths. So 16ths is a good kind of like rule of thumb until you get really. I'll use faster than 16ths when I'm doing little. If I ever make a bass line like this kind of thing, that's probably too fast. Or I might go into triplets for this, but this is a terrible example. 1 second. Let me see if I can find one that actually sounds good. That kind of thing. This is the wrong sound for it, right? This is the wrong sound for it. But let's. Why have we suddenly got? Oh, sorry. I could hear the rest of the. You know those kind of lines. They happen. Not necessarily in basses. It's quite common in leads. If you want to do that kind of like that drill, I don't mean the genre drill. I just mean I call that a drill. That's when you go into below 16ths. But 99.999% of the time, I'm here and I'm messing with note lengths. Again, genre dependent, groove dependent, vibe dependent. You see Eli Brown does a lot of 16, you know. But yeah, 16's always a safe bet to start with. In terms of a grid, you'll find most, you know, the majority of dance rhythms are made on that 16 grid. Obviously, you can go into swing amounts when you get used to listening for what swing is, because that changes the grid, right? Under the hood, it's changing the grid. Let me show you what swing's actually doing. When we change swing here, let me get rid of the lead so we can focus on it. There's my leads. Right. Let's go back to I need to mute everything. Let's go back to the percussive sound. That's swung, very 59% swung to be precise. Here's not swung. Swung. So all swing is doing is taking every other note and doing that. So this is swing. And the percentage that's shown here is basically the percentage moved from middle to next note. So, or sometimes it's measured as the percentage to the next triplet. If you divide the grid into threes, this would be triplets. Just depending on how the swing's measured, that would be either 66% or 100%. So, but. So yeah, I suppose while we're on the subject of triplets, yeah, I mean, if you want to make psytrance, you don't do 16ths. You'll be on a triplet grid. But you will need to be your drums will have to be also on triplets. Unless you're deliberately going for a bit of a wonky groove, like Oxia Domino, still the great example. That's a duplet beat with a triplet bass. Terrible track to mix in because they've put the bass in the intro, which is a terrible idea. But where was I? 16ths, yeah. Can't go wrong with 16ths. Unless you're doing the aforementioned kind of drill patterns or triplet things. And again, you can mix and match. Like I've made bass lines before that if you set your grid to triplets, so this is these are 8th triplets now. Oops. I need to come out of triplet mode. Back to 16ths. I can't see my keyboard for the microphone. Sorry. But you probably would. This is a really awkward groove. So what I've done in the past and seen done is you'll have a standard 16th groove for something like this, and then the triplet is your turnaround. That kind of thing. So mostly 16th, so yeah. Especially if you're starting off, don't complicate things for yourself. You'll be able to create 99% of the grooves that will ever make you famous on a 16th grid. Don't worry about it. Start there if you don't know what else is going on. Speed garage bass lines. You mean like the womp womps? Well, yeah, Serum, Massive. But I mean, Vital again. Vital does everything Massive does, and it does everything Serum does, but it's free. So I moved from Massive and Serum to Vital. If you're going to recommend one of those, you always recommend Vital, like in their place, or alongside them at least. A, it deserves it. And B, because it's a very generous project, right? I actually think it sounds better than Serum in some circumstances. The filters are fantastic. It's got no sub-oscillator, a dedicated path, but that's just awkward to use in a mix anyway. You would just create a separate track with a sine wave on for that. While we're on, let's we got let's add. I want to do a quick speed garage thing just to show you where. Let's just get a little snare. We've got claps over here. Here's our snares. I need a little. I'll know it when I hear it. I need a really short snare. It's a bit trap. Right idea. Okay, just 909. That's fine. Pretty sure it's 909 anyway. Just so I can do skippy vibes for speed garage. This is the most makeshift, not accurate speed garage groove you've ever heard, but let's go, what, 135? Let's program something. Actually, I've got to program classic. Something like that. Doesn't really matter. Yeah. I don't know about presets made available, but if you want to make sounds in the whole Speed Garage vein, let me reset this preset. It's all very much, well, let's start with a square. It's always a good starting point. We have a bit of squelch. Let's go ladder filter, some resonance. The important bit is slow attack on the and then we want to not the best example, but you get the idea. That's the principle behind a lot of those guys. Or the other way to get there is FM. They use a lot of FM as well. So you start with a sine wave. You take a second sine wave. We're going to multiply the bottom sine wave with the top one. Let's go here. So you might do the envelope on this. Kind of thing. It's a super quick example, but those are the kind of principles behind a lot of the garage sounds. We are doing garage too. I've had so many questions on garage. We will get to it. There's just lots of like house, right? There's lots of version of garage, so I'm just trying to aggregate the questions. Vital Masterclass. Yeah, I mean, have you been watching the synth series? I know I'm covering what most synths can do via Vital, but that's because it does all things, which is why it replaced every other synth I've used. I mean, that's for programming. For inspiration, I've got a few little bits of bats. What was the other one I liked called? Obviously, everyone needs a rave generator. Not that it's legal. Careful using rave generator. But Pendulate, that was it. I really like that plugin. Only because you don't know what you're going to get from it. It uses pendulum oscillators, which is kind of a fancy way of generating sound, and it's not typical, and you don't get to see the waveform, so you don't judge it with your eyes. I like Pendulate sometimes when I don't know what I want, but other than that, I'm in Vital 99% of the time, obviously, unless I need an acoustic sound. For those of you that don't know, the main two distinctions between instruments are synthesizers, which synthesize sound from scratch with waves like, sines, triangles, and sawtooths and squares, those kind of things, and then more complex waveforms. And then you've got sample players, like things that play piano and strings and acoustic sounds that have been recorded and then played back. Those are the main two distinctions between instruments, just in case you didn't know. But yeah, and in which case I would probably just say Labs, free lab, Spitfire's free plugin Labs is great for lots of stuff. Am I Geordie? No. Grew up in Lancashire, so kind of Mancunian, kind of like, it's like an awkward mix of Mancunian and Yorkshire. Geordie's way further up north, where they say, "Why are you, man?" Not that I can do the accent. But not Geordie. I do love that Geordie game reviewer though. What's he called? Mac Worth a Buy channel. Hilarious fella. Check out Worth a Buy on YouTube if you want video game reviews. He's brutally honest and he's got a Geordie accent. It's just the two combined is hilarity ensued. What would you want from the... I'm doing a part 3 to the synth series, Dully. What would you want from the Vital Masterclass? What specific questions have you got left that the first 2 videos didn't cover? DJ B, how I get my tracks so loud when I'm not using... How do you get your tracks so loud if you're not using limiters? Well, that's why they're so loud, right? You need to understand psychoacoustics, and it's a fancy word, but it just means it's the way the brain hears sound, right? It's not... The way your brain hears sound is not this. And it's not this. And it's not this. Right? The way the brain interprets sound has got nothing to do with any of that. Those are helpful for our eyes, which do rule our ears, and that's a big problem. Talked about it earlier, the McGurk effect. But in general, the brain doesn't work like that. The way we hear sound is a lot more nuanced and complex. It's why it's took 30 years for a computer to be able to extract a vocal properly, when in our mind we've always been able to separate a vocal inside of another song, inside of a song, right? You've always been able to identify another human voice inside a song. It's natural for our ears and brain to be able to do that. Computers have only just caught up. Hundreds of years it's took them. So the brain's very complex, and you have to understand what a limiter does. And you have to understand what goes on in the digital domain in terms of sound versus voltage. Because it goes in as voltage, it gets converted to zeros and ones. That's your sample rate. Well, the number of samples taken over time is your sample rate. The bit depth is how many degrees of difference there are for each sample. And then it gets reinterpolated into voltage again to make real sound at the end, right? So you have to know what goes on in the 32-bit audio domain in the digital world. You have to understand a little bit of that. But in general, I'll just say this. The dancier you can make your music, the louder it will be. Because this is why I said earlier that I don't use compressors or limiters, because if you're like this bass, right? Let's do this bass. Let's take the sidechain off. Let me just turn this extreme stereo effect off. A bit of it anyway. Right, so if I was to compress or limit this, I know this is not a full track, but just bear with me for the lesson. Obviously, it gets quieter because a compressor's job or a limit. By the way, a limiter is just an infinite ratio compressor, right? I mean, obviously, there's a little bit more behind the scenes, and you know, the better ones do a little bit of clipping for you and other stuff like that. But again, psychoacoustics, making a good sounding limiter is not easy. But the job of a limiter, compressor, this is a limiter, right? When we go infinite to 1 ratio, the release gives us distortion if it's faster than the waveform. But it gets quieter, obviously. So then you go, oh, how much is it reducing it by? 11 dB. Let's go up by 11 dB to compensate then. Something like that. Apart from the fact that it's now distorting. What have you done to the dynamics of that bass line? There are no dynamics to change. It's a square wave, mostly. Well, we're FM synthesis on this one, but it's close to a square wave. It's not like there's quiet bits and loud bits that need to be tamed by a compressor. So the compressor's doing absolutely nothing. And the worst bit about compression, for those people who don't know how to use compressors, if you ever dare select a preset in a compressor, well, God help you, because all that's going on there, unless it's there's a new range of more smart plugins coming out by Focusrite and Soniball and a few Ozone, Isotope as well, brands like that, where they actually measure the input. But most compressors that you're ever going to use, if you select a preset, unless you manually set the threshold to where the sound starts, and again, if you don't know how to use a compressor, this is why you're probably using a preset, because you don't know how to use a compressor, so it's a double problem. If you don't set the threshold manually, a compressor preset might just do this. And you go, ooh, that's much better. But all it's done is turned it up by 6 dB. Even a compressor that turns it up by 1 dB will sound better in a subtle way. The ears are easily fooled by that, right? Volume. Our ears are not linear with volume. Again, part of psychoacoustics, if you understand something the Fletcher and Munson scientists did ages ago, the Fletcher-Munson curves, how our frequency range changes over volume range, right? So the louder something is, we actually hear more high frequencies and more low frequencies. That smile curve starts to happen to our ears because our mids compress, because our ears are trained for the human voice. So the louder something is, the sound does not stay the same. Louder sounds actually get brighter and deeper to our ears just by changing volume, because our ears are not linear. So if a compressor preset turns up the volume and you don't know it's not actually doing any compression, you're going to think it's better. But the point is, most sounds in dance music, your kick drum, your hi-hats, your snares, they're not dynamic. They're not subtly louder and softer in bits. They're not like a real drummer or a real bass player or a real guitarist or a real vocalist, right? I would use a compressor on a vocalist, for example. But not on any dance instrument, typically, because there's nothing to compress or limit. And that goes for the whole thing. It's like the only thing your limiter is going to do is remove transients. And as soon as you remove the details of the music, which is where the transients are, the ear will hear it as both duller, because the transients are the fastest bits of the music. So that's where the high frequencies are. So suddenly, just by adding a limiter, you've effectively EQ'd the top end off your track, but in a dynamic way, which is worse, because you've took all the bite off the drums, and your bass is probably beginning to fart because the limiter can't handle both the subs and the drum transients and the bass all at the same time. It's a very complex relationship. If you don't sort that before it gets to the limiter, you've got no chance. So you make something loud by making it as dynamic as you can, because the dynamics aren't there. What you're doing with limiters and compressors is the opposite. You're reducing what dynamics aren't even there in the first place, or if it has some, you've just got rid of them. And that is the opposite of what the ear thinks is loud. Things that scare you loud like that are dynamic. That is loudness, because, apologies to everyone, but that's the point. That's where loudness comes from. When everything is squashed and limited and everything is uniform volume, nothing is loud. Everything's just a sea of average. There's no peaks, there's no valleys, there's nothing to jump out the speakers, there's no transients. The ear picks up on dynamics. We live in a real sound environment. Sound is dynamic. And the electronic music we produce is not dynamic unless we make it so. So, rant over. Sorry. Be careful with your limiters. Let your transients live and breathe. You just don't have to use compression or I have not limited a track. Like, there's a limiter goes on in the breaks here when the vocals in the thing. I need to reload this session. 1 second. Let's pick a random, like the worst example is drum and bass, right? Let me just load the drum and bass track I did recently. What was it called? I think it was Alive within the vocal. Alive and Flow, right. So let me show you what's going on here. Just to hammer the point home. No, I don't have to glue anything together because I've already picked the sounds correctly. Again, the gluing sounds together is homogenizing them. If you need them to sit in the background and just kind of be a more busy, dense noise, like if you've got background sounds that need to mush together so they don't compete with whatever the lead focus is, like the vocal or the lead sound, maybe you would compress those to glue them together. But no, I've not needed to use a compressor or a limiter for half a decade for that, because the sounds just take care of themselves. Again, this is like absolute kind of, it's just not needed. It's old school. Like, the reason compressors were invented were to tame dynamic instruments, live instruments, vocals, guitars, trumpets, especially brass, live drums. Do you know how loud a real snare drum can get? It's about 140 dB. It's like, it's louder than your ears can actually handle. Never put your ear near a real snare drum, by the way. You will be deafened. Those things are really dynamic, and to fit them on a radio or to fit them on a tape so the tape didn't distort, that's when you need compressors and limiters. That's why they were invented. And then over time, the vintage units got kind of fetishized because they have a certain flavor. And obviously, it's all useful, but if you're going to use it as a flavor tool. That's my opinion, and know how to use it. If you're just guessing, if you don't know how a compressor works, just don't touch them. They are not needed at all. Not in dance music. Just leave it alone. Get your sounds great from scratch. Match your reference. Again, it's all to the reference. Reference every 20 minutes so your ears don't reset. So your ears reset and they don't settle. But yeah, we've got watch your ears. This is at 0 dB. There's nothing I can do about the YouTube output. Watch this. Limiter is going to turn off. So the limiter's on to stop the vocal, obviously distorting. So you'll see how little it's actually doing. 1, 2 dB. And then it goes off. Now, because it's drum and bass, we've got some serious subs going on here. We've got... How far down are we? Yeah, we're below 40 hertz on some of these bass notes. That's huge. Obviously, drum and bass has higher kicks than house in general, as in higher central frequencies, so they don't interfere with the subs. But in terms of absolute loudness, let me just load the Ulean. Like, this track is disgusting. Like, I've already taken 3 dB off the master because this is... -6 LUFS. It's 7 dB above Spotify's hottest standard. Spotify is just going to reduce that by 7 dB. It's absolutely unnecessary. But do the drums sound squashed, or does this mix sound a disaster? Is it mushy? No, I've got clear drums, I've got clear vocals. The backbeat, the crack of that snare is hitting you in the chin. And again, it's not about, I'm not trying to be loud. I'm just knowing where the transients have to be, because if you want to dance to this track, the backbeat of that snare drum needs to crack. Dr. Dre taught us this 30 years ago. The kick and snare need to knock, as the term he would use. But, you know, it's more about listening for that, knowing what people are going to dance to, where to place the beats in the groove, letting the transients breathe, just understanding how people dance to dance music. You know, where, I don't know if you've seen people dance to drum and bass, it's a very different dance to house, right? Because they're off the ground a lot more. And where they place their feet and what they do with their hands. It's very important you get the backbeat absolutely bang on, and the groove in between that as well. But, you know, just in general, you just need to be aiming for dynamic, lively sound. Look, this could be 7 dB lower. That's how it's going to play back on Spotify. Absolutely fine. I don't need to master it. Nothing needs to be on. The limiter can now come off. Etc, etc. That goes out. That goes to stores. And I have tracks with hundreds of millions of plays that didn't have a limiter on, and not a single compressor. Let's have a look at the kick drum. Everyone talks about how to, you know, get a really good kick drum. Wow, look. I've got a chest bump, as I call that. And that fizz on the top was doing my heading, so I turned it down a bit. Get away with that, probably. Again, we shouldn't be doing this in solo either, should we? Because that's got nothing to do with how it sounds in the track. Psychoacoustics means our brain interprets that kick drum sound completely differently when the rest of the music is in, so you can only judge it there. But you see a compressor? No. Do we have a compressor on the snare? No. What else have we got? We've just got lots of, you know. Now we're compressing. Well, distorting. I've grunged those breaks up because I wanted to grunge them up. Part of the vibe. Nothing to do with mastering volume or anything like that. It's an aesthetic decision. Our bass is here. We've got an FM. Of course, it's vital. I've got my a few EQs on there. We've got the stereo Voxengo thing. I've got a sine wave for a sub. I've actually dialed up a couple of harmonics on that. But no compressors. The compressors there are doing sidechain off the kick, which again is just, that's different to compressing the sound for dynamics reasons, right? This is purely a headroom thing. Get rid of the sub every time the kick comes in. I've got sidechain compression for the lead group. Again, aesthetic principle, that doesn't change anything. It's just whether you want it to pump or not in terms of groove. That's a groove decision, not a engineering thing. Got a drone here with a bunch of sidechain compressors on. What's my M1 doing? Do I have... Ooh! Hey, look, we've got a real compressor on the M1, because M1s are super spiky, right? M1s are dynamic. Not that it's doing a lot, but I presume something spiky at the beginning was annoying me, so I just grabbed it with a compressor there. So we've got one compressor so far. What's this? Oh, the stab's not being used. Nothing on that. Nothing on that. This is the ARP. No, that's not being used. This ARP is on. Nothing on that. Let's have a look at the lead sound. No compressor there. Again, sidechain on the lead group. Yeah. Just so it pumps with the kick drum. Again, aesthetic choice. This is all my effects. You won't find any compressors on them unless you do sometimes find risers that get really out of hand, which you could add a compressor to, so it doesn't get super loud at the end. But even then, it's better just to turn it down because the compressor will add distortion, which might not be good for the riser. What we got over here? So this is the vocal chain, right? I have a TDR Nova on, which is acting as a de-esser. So technically, multiband. That's like that's a dynamic EQ, which is a type of compression, but just on the annoying upper frequencies of the voice. Again, probably to stop it clashing with the kick drum and snare drum groove. I've added chorus. I've poked before the annoying dip. You see my first attempt at getting rid of the high. That's what I was trying to get rid of. Absolutely not necessary for the you want the hi-hats up there, not the vocal. Delay, reverb, delay. No compressor. I could already hear the vocal was compressed, so I didn't put a compressor on it. So some splice vocals are already like that. They're quite, to impress you, to make you download them, they have to kind of process them in some fashion already, right? So you find a lot of them are already pre-compressed. You don't have to do a lot, but that's it. There's no compression limited on this entire track apart from some vocal sections where what you'll find is if you've got like really dull pads like this, that's not a dull pad, that kind of thing. So we've not got a lot of high frequencies. And then if you put a human voice in there, and if you're too loud, this happens. We're still not doing it. Let me add bass frequencies. Alright, still not doing it, but let's artificially say we were even louder. I don't want to kill your ears by actually turning up past 0. Let me just load, what's it called? Free clip. Just so we can pretend we're 6 dB louder. So you'll find this happens with a vocal because our ears are tuned for vocals, right? That's what our ears are evolutionarily designed to listen for. We know what a vocal sounds like. That's all our evolutionary oral training has been, is for voice, for safety. So you can hear there's obvious distortion on the vocal there because there's the clipping isn't masked by any other high frequencies. We're not getting any hi-hats, we're not getting any bright synths. If I open the synth, however, the now let's try it. Hear how the bright synth now masks the clipping. Now this is a brute force approach. I'm just showing you the kind of principles behind psychoacoustics, but I would be less inclined to put a limiter on that section of the track if the pad was bright and the vocals weren't obviously distorting. But that's the only section of the track I ended up putting a limiter on. But As we can see, not necessary at all if you just at sensible volume anyway. Let's just turn all this off. The worst case scenario is this. Let's choose Ableton's own limiter. It's not the best, but it's technically a limiter. And when you add that to the drop, we've lost our snare drum and our groove, and that's the decision. Is what the rant is just about, teaching you to listen for groove, what people are dancing for, know how people move to music, and that's your decision. It's not about achieving -6 blah 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 blah. None of that. Sound doesn't work like that. Music doesn't work like that. Sorry. Where can I get the racks? Depends which ones. Like the ones. Yeah, I mean, all I do is like I just map. The problem is I can't redistribute this plugin legally. You see, I can't give you the TDR Nova, so the racks kind of. I suppose I could still upload them without the plugins, and then you download the plugins. And I mean, it's a bit of a messy solution, but if you want the pluginless racks for you to then load, let me know. Yeah, I can upload those. That's not a problem. But I can't redistribute the plugins legally. Creative Commons licenses prevent that, and I'm going to respect that because they've been generous enough to release the plugin for free anyway. So. Basically just a way of logically approaching creating sound without randomly mooching through presets and hoping to strike gold. Well, yeah, I mean, the reason I'm attracted to the free version of Vital is because the only limitation on the free version was it came with less presets. So obviously that's not a problem for me because I love making sounds. I make every single one from scratch because I'm versed in synthesis now and sound design. I can usually get pretty close to what I'm getting towards. And the journey along the way usually means you end up with something slightly original anyway, compared to what you were. I never really truly go for exactly what was in the record unless I'm being asked to do so by someone else. But yeah, so I hope you understand the whole principle of, yeah, just don't. Someone said it on the, I'm not sure if it was also you, DJB, but someone said it on the comments about how is this YouTube video so loud? And I didn't know it was, to be honest, but it's exactly because I don't reach for loudness that the stuff ends up loud, if that makes sense. It's counterintuitive to a newcomer who's been bombarded with YouTube videos about this compressor and this limiter and this genius clipping technique and blah 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 blah. By the way, if you clip your drums before you clip your master, you just double clip, and digital clipping's not the best, so you keep it to a minimum. But I'll take clipped drum transients over limited drum transients if needed any day. Do I have anything on the whole drums channel? So look, no, there we go. Nothing. Well, that's the top drums, and then you saw what was on the snare and kick. So this is our. That's the whole shebang. Nothing. And then the EQ and the snare and the kick. But see, yeah, you'll have channels say, oh, group this, and then add a compressor. Like, here's the glue compressor. That's conveniently named, right? The one that's modeled on the coveted SSL bus compressor. Forgetting why the SSL needed a bus compressor in the first place. But let's not go there, shall we? But hey, let's glue our drums together. Hooray, you've turned up the hi-hats. I mean, I'm being pedantic, right? I'm teasing you a bit. There's reasons to do that. Like, if you if you get these attack settings bang on, like if I go really high attack, fast release, we can treat this EQ, this compressor now becomes an EQ. Right? It got brighter. Did you hear that? Because by having a very slow attack and fast release, we've only let the transients through, which are the high frequencies. It's clamped down on the bass frequencies, so now we've got less low end in our drums. And the fast release is technically giving us a bit of distortion, which is even more top end, right? We've got even more brightness. Now, do you want that? Like, maybe, but I've already chosen my kick drum and my snare drum, and the problem with that is, yes, we got a brighter sound, we got a little bit more transients out the drums, but then all the hi-hats got squishy and suffered because they were now being dictated by the kick and the snare drum. So I've lost control over the groove I made in the first place, just because someone told me to put a compressor on to glue the elements together. So again, it comes back to that thing. If you don't know what you're doing, just leave them alone. Leave dynamics processors alone. If you don't know really what's going on under the hood, you're not making a deliberate flavor decision, and you need to be able to compare at equal loudness. I wasn't truly compensating the volume there properly. You find 99% of the time, if you turn the compressor on and off and the volume is compensated exactly correctly, you'll find the compressed version usually sounds worse. Usually. That happens more than not. Unless you deliberately want what we call the box tone from that compressor, like the way it adds harmonics or distorts or does something weird to the sound. If you know what that compressor does and you use it for that, yeah, go for it. But again, you're not the type of person that would be asking that question about, gluing drums together. So I would just say, as a general rule of thumb, until you really develop your ears over the next kind of 10 years, the 10-year overnight success, until you get your 10,000 hours in, just don't do it for the sake of doing it. Everyone's obsessed with, now we've got CPUs that can handle, I could put 600 compressors on this track, across this track. If I could have 600 tracks running in an orchestra and put a compressor on every single one, my CPU would probably be okay or something maybe. But, just because you can, doesn't mean you should. So I think that's part of the problem. It's now, compressors were invented to tame dynamics for radio, for tape, for vinyl, all these other reasons. And like I say, the vintage units are now fetishized. And then SSL invented the, was it SSL? They invented the inbuilt compressor on the desk. I can't remember which desk did it first, but when you get those sort of privileges, when it's no longer just the one compressor in the, the one 3,000 pound compressor in your studio that you can use, now there's one on every channel, which is where our digital DAWs have gone, right? Now it's abusable, and you need to understand, well, with great power comes great responsibility. So it's just because you can doesn't mean you should. It's yeah. I hope that's got through to a few people. How did I do the ARPs? The ARP is, you mean that one? Let me just check what else there is. Unless you mean that's kind of that's the piano stab on. But that is that's just a minor scale. I've just this is a really lazy way of doing it. Actually, I've just let me show you. It's really, I've used Ableton's own arpeggiator, so it's just going. It's in the down direction. It's starting from the top, going down. So all that's really going on is, you just draw your scale downwards like this. This is literally all that's going on. I've done that wrong, haven't I? I want that note. I want E onwards. Oh, wrong scale, but you get the idea. And what's going on underneath is we have almost a sawtooth. That's a triangle wave. That's a sawtooth. You can see why. You can see why I've took that down a little bit. I didn't want it too bright. Again, it's a decision versus the vocal and other things, right? Filters down. Again, taking a bit of... We're soft clipping. I've taken the bottom end off. We've got reverb, delay. And then even more EQ to make it fit in the track. Obviously, something in the low end was annoying me, so that's all dipped out. And I think that's just there to poke your attention, you know, to poke it up while it's at the top of this spectrum. So it's technically, because it's going down in frequency, right? It's technically going quieter. So it's almost as if I did. I could have achieved the same thing almost with the velocities, doing that, right? Just going down over time, or maybe programming a volume ramp. Multiple ways of doing that. But yeah, it's just literally 16th notes running down the scale on a almost saw wave with some delay reverb, a bit of distortion. Nothing too... Yep, the synth built-in reverb's fine for that. Didn't need anything else. If you meant this is the piano line. Hey, look, it's everyone's favorite waveform. Pure sawtooth. You'll see a pattern, by the way, in how a lot of these sounds are designed. So this is just a pluck. Very dead mouse in a way, old school dead mouse, but I think we have, we've got the voices turned up, so this is technically like lots of saw waves in stereo, being detuned. That's a pure saw wave. That's cool. Oh, look, we're using compression. The multiband built in. It's basically like slapping OTT on. I don't use OTT as a compressor. I use it as like an exciter. Again, if you compare everything at equal volume, you'll figure out if it makes the sound better or worse. So that added a nice top. As you can see, I'm reaching for some top end bite here. I got some out of the EQ. Despite taking it out with the filter, that might look counterintuitive. But this is this is a time-based thing, right? We want that spike to be there, and then this is kind of like adding to the spike. So delay. Yeah, nothing. As you can see, lots of frequency control mid-mix. That ARP is now out of tune because I picked the wrong scale, but I hope that answered your ARP question. Nothing too special going on there. It's all about, again, context. Would putting a parallel compressor on a return track and using less than 100 wetness or taste be a better option than what? Woodsman, better option than what? Sorry, I missed when you asked the question. I don't know what the context is. Know the rules so you know how to break them. Apparently Pablo Picasso, that was. But that could just be internet being internet and misquoting people. But apparently there's a famous quote, yeah. Learn the rules like a pro so you can break them like an artist, I think was the quote. Great quote. Then putting a compressor on every drum track. Again, I don't value compressors not on electronic drums. If you're making rock, yeah, compressors are kind of essential. Especially if you're not just using triggers for the drum samples. Like if you're making a real kits are extremely dynamic. Hundreds of dBs of difference between the loudest and the softest parts. Then you're going to need compressors. And then aesthetically, you might want to like really crush a parallel compressor on a rock track for, like, I've used parallel compression and extreme compression on breaks. Let's grab a break from, you know, my favorite pack. What's it called? Sample Magic. I think it's by Sample Magic. Vintage Breaks series. Breaks. No, actually, I put them in big beat and now I can't move them because. Let's just pick something pretty dynamic. All right. So we've got loads of transients in that snare. Of course, we're in the completely wrong tempo because we're now drum and bass. Let's take Ableton stretching off. Actually, it's a bit weird. Let me just mono. Let's get something weird going on in there. Oh, there we go. Something weird going on in the stereo of that. So let's take this and then I'll tell you what's Audio Damage's compressor called. This is like a really extreme compressor that I love. It's called, I'm sure is it Rough Rider. So if this is like the background break, you know, all day, give me that. And then mix it in. Let's bypass. Still not truly same level, but you get the idea. If you're using acoustic, like proper acoustic drums, those often benefit from either flavor compression or necessary compression to actually tame the dynamics, because they will be all over the place when they're played by a real human. Electronic drums, kick snares, whoops. Now, does anyone make drum and bass at 220 BPM, by the way? Anyone know? Is that a new genre I just invented? But yeah, if the kick and snare are already doing their thing, they're perfect. I picked them on purpose. So there's just no reason to adding a parallel compressor to that. Just it's going to increase the volume because I'm adding a parallel amount of signal. So we're going to increase the volume somewhat. And yes, it's the same argument as adding a glue compressor to the group. It's parallel compression is a lot less damaging, but it's a bit like saying she's a little bit pregnant. You know what I mean? It's like it either is or it isn't. So if it's not, it's just not needed. I just don't. If you know what you're doing and you want to parallel compress for flavor, like maybe this, because the thing with acoustic drums is they're going to have some ambience that you can squeeze out of there, right? Like, or you might have an electronic clap sample that has a nice reverb tail, but it's very quiet. So in that case, you would parallel compress the clap and then crank the release and the makeup gain so that you hear the reverb tail after the initial transient. And that would be an example of why I would compress a clap, but it's got nothing to do with taming the dynamics. It'd be because I was reaching for the ambience in the background that I would need to squeeze out. Again, that's a specific flavor thing. Like that ambience would have to be specific that I couldn't just achieve with another reverb. So that's why I would do that. But in general, again, you just don't. Well, I would say don't if you don't know what you're doing. It's just far easier and better and quicker and not needed. You'll be tweaking if you don't know what you're doing and your ears are still learning. You'll be tweaking a compressor for a week, and you could have just released the track. It wouldn't have made any difference. You know, those subtle extra highs I got from grouping the even if I did get a group compressor on those drums to make it sound 1%, 2% better, It's not going to make any difference to the streams. It's not going to make a difference in the club that much. It's just like releasing the track is far more important than obsessing over these little like fetishes of need to squeeze and glue and get these kind of tones. Yeah, it's like, again, if you're reaching for flavor, you know what specific flavors you're going for. Like how I use Rough Rider to crush breaks sometimes because it sounds filthy. That's an aesthetic decision. But it's not because I want to get -6 dB on Spotify or whatever. It's got nothing to do with that. So those are the reasons you would choose to compress, in my opinion. Again, I'm just one guy. I don't agree with many other engineers on this, by the way. You're not going to hear this advice from, I think, anybody else, because this is just the way I've developed over the last 15 years. I saw Dr. Dre was clipping his snares or something. I can't remember what the... Oh, no. It was Bob Katz' mastering book. So there's a great book by Bob Katz. He's a legendary mastering engineer called... I think it's just called The Art and the Science. Beautiful title, because he's a very holistic thinker like me. So, well, I just got it from him, really. He's a holistic thinker. He talks about groove a lot. He talks about dynamics and moving people, because music's emotional, right? So that's what you can't be talking numbers all day. You'll just spend the rest of your life on the Gearspace forums arguing over whose snare drum's slightly louder or something. You're never going to make any music that touches the world, right? So you need a holistic approach to everything. Why does it exist? Why are you doing what you're doing? And in that book, it's a really well formatted book. It's a good read. He's a good writer as well. Not that I'm a book. I don't read books. I don't read books for pleasure. I can't read like novels or anything, or even graphic novels. I can't do that for pleasure. I've not got the attention span. But he's a good writer. He held my attention from cover to cover. It's geeky as hell, but every now and then throughout the pages, there's a bit of the paragraph cut out, and in larger letters are the bigger quotes, and they're always like a myth. It was like myth. Just because it's gone into the red doesn't mean it's at 0 dB or something like that. There's always some kind of myth on one of the pages, and the one that caught my eye that I'll never forget, that started this journey, was the best mix does not need mastering, or a good mix does not need mastering. So straight away, he planted the seed in my brain that mastering was not a necessary process. And once you run with that thought all the way down the garden path, you follow every seed that's planted, you understand, and you stop fetishizing mastering and wondering what the magic is that it's supposed to do that will fix what's wrong with you. You stop making that thought, because suddenly, it's not even a necessary process. Because remember, we had to master. The mastering engineer's job used to be to put the album in order. They would pick the track's order to work as an album. That was one of their jobs. And they would make sure it fit on, under 79 minutes for the CD. They would make sure it fit under so many minutes for a 12-inch EP and a 7-inch EP. They would make sure it wouldn't make the groove of the needle in the groove skip on a vinyl record. They would make sure it didn't distort the tape. That was the mastering engineer's job. It's all not, it's a world apart now. So many of those thoughts and things that are still taught today come from that school that doesn't exist anymore. So once you demysticize the mastering process and understand that it's not even a necessary process, that made me look backwards. And then I think I heard Dr. Dre was clipping his snares or something. I was like, oh, is that why my snares have always sounded flat? And then I got my transients back, and then you get an ear for transients, and then your music comes alive, and then it starts jumping out of the speakers, and then you're like, oh my God, I don't need to use compressors. It's sounding, especially in the early days when you're just guessing. I just think it's a great... Yeah, it's called The Art and the Science. Bob Katz with a Z, Katz. Like I say, geeky as hell, but the man has knowledge beyond your years. that you should heed. And this is a guy that he's come from the vintage analog days and understood that early digital was poor. You know, digital got a bad name versus analog because the early converters were terrible, you know, as technology evolves. But even he embraced digital compression and, you know, started using things like Wise compressors because they could do clever things that analog compressors couldn't do in the digital domain, like having 2 different release times for transients versus, you know. Anyway, great read, great guy. Bob Katz actually hangs around on the Gearspace forums giving out advice to new people, which is kind of another inspiration for why I made the channel, because I like to pass on my professional experience. I made it lucky, right? I'm already doing it for a living. I'm here, I'm doing it, I'm getting paid. So absolute best gift I can give is to pass on what I know and understand. And that's what he did to me. Thoroughly recommended, yes. You've just watched Subfocus Live. Yeah, great stuff. It was I can't remember what the festival was that I first caught Subfocus. It was a long time ago. It's probably one of the hospital records. Yeah, I found Subfocus in a tent and instantly caught my attention. I think he was scratching. He was scratching drum and bass, which was interesting enough in itself to hold my attention. But then the tracks were fire as well. So, yeah, what a guy. What an artist. By the way, disclosure, I don't think Subfocus mixes like this. He probably doesn't. He probably puts group compressors on his drums, which I've just told you not to do. But hopefully you understand my perspective. This is what I know to be true. I know it works because I have success in the industry already, and I think it's just good, solid advice to stop wondering about if compressors will save your problems, because the problem is in your ear training. Just get it right in the first place. The experience and skills you will get from developing your ear will outmatch anything a piece of gear can do for you. The Actual Gamer, hello. Sorry, you just caught us at the end of a rant there. If you've just joined us, welcome. I'm just basically saying, stop using compressors and limiters, which are compressors by another name. If you absolutely don't have to, learn to go without them. Anyway, yes, hopefully you understand. Like, this isn't. I'm never going to say always do this, never do this. Those absolute terms don't exist. Music is emotional, it's subjective. And now we don't have record labels governing the charts. Well, they try their best, don't they? They buy the playlists. But now there's no absolute gatekeepers to success, and you can self-release. You don't have to do everything the way everyone does it. Make some creative decisions. Develop your ear. Develop your sound, and you'll be fine as long as you keep at it. Hi, Jack. Do I listen? Yeah, track reviews. No, I had a rant about that earlier. Let me guess. Answer me this question. Why do you want your track reviewed? Because everyone has the same question, I think. Anyone who wants their track reviewed, answer me now. What exactly do you want to know? I'm going to have this on loop in the background quietly. Is my track good? Well, exactly. This is it, right? That is the most common question. Is it any good? And don't get me wrong, I don't blame you guys. But there's only one way to find out. So you know what the answer is. Like I said earlier, every artist I've ever known, and I'm talking famous people as well, that I've worked with, people who are very, very, very successful. Every single one of them, we have the same conversation. The story is repeatable and consistent. They never called any of their hits. They had no idea which one was going to be the hit. Like, my personal example, right? I uploaded that cover of Wicked Game. Back then I was collabing with a DJ and we were called Chilean. We did a Wicked Game cover. We had a great vocalist called Seren, Welsh girl. And I really wanted to learn that guitar lick, so I kind of replayed all the guitar parts, and we thought Tropical House would really, really fit. Tropical House was big at the time. So we thought, let's do Tropical House Wicked Game. And Wicked Game's not an obvious cover because it's in Dorian scale, not minor or major, so it's in Dorian. So some people don't spot that, so I knew I could get that bit right as well. So there's a little bit of musical stuff in there, but mostly we just thought emotionally that track is really going to fit on Tropical House. I uploaded it to SoundCloud, and I think that was it. And then the DJ I was working with started to try and buy likes for the channel on the SoundCloud. And suddenly we were really popular in Thailand and India. Which is a problem. Because that's where the Click Farm used to be, right? Anyway, so I broke that whole project up. I was like, I don't want to be a part of this. I've never bought likes in my life. I'm an organic artist. Homegrown. I don't buy numbers. I'm not interested in numbers. To satiate my ego. So I left that alone. 5 years later, some random YouTube channel called, back then it was called, it was one of the star signs, Scorpio or something, Scorpio Music or something. It's now called Melodic, I think. Some guy rips it off my SoundCloud, uploads it, and we have no idea why it went viral, because none of his channel has any other big numbers on it at all. Still doesn't. Didn't back then. I think I found a tweet by like a semi-famous actress in another country. That might have been the link, but we couldn't find out why it went viral. But that got 80 million streams 5 years after I uploaded it. Long after Tropical House had been trendy. Wasn't around anymore. Well, maybe in Germany, I think they were still listening to it. But that experience goes for every single artist I've ever met. You've got no idea which one of yours is going to be the hit. Like I said, I had that track that my very first mix ended up on a TV series, and it was terrible. I mean, it's all right, but it's not. So the whole "is my track good" thing is just like, what am I supposed to say? It's not for me or you to decide if the track's good. What you do is you put it up on Spotify, and then you put one up the week after, and then you put one up the week after that, and then you put one up the week after that, and you do that for 2 to 3 years, consistently. And guess what? When you put a track up every week on Spotify, like I do, for 3 years straight, guess what? You get pretty good. You don't start good. No one starts good, but it doesn't matter, because it's not for you to decide what's good. It's for them, right? You never know what's going to touch somebody, or appear on the same day as their wedding, or just happen to say the right thing to them at the right moment in time of their life, or the worst moment in their life. You never know. It's not under your control. You just have, but it has to be out there. It can't be on your hard drive. That's the only thing I would advise, is it can't stay on your hard drive, because then it can't be anywhere other than your hard drive. So, and the ironic thing is, you'll probably find the first terrible thing you did does way more numbers than one of the ones you were really proud of, because that happens all the time. All the time. So you just never know. It's what to you, like I said earlier, what sounds amateurish to you is just a fresh sound to a new listener. Because, I mean, look what's happening in the pop industry, right? Do we or do we not agree? Has anyone watched Rick Beato here? Like, I'm not the fan of everything he says, but you know, this constant grumble, old man shouting at the clouds, you know, all pop music sounds the same. Do we all agree it's kind of getting a bit homogenized, right? I'm kind of bored. Anyone else bored of pop? Yeah, I mean, this is what's happened. Now the record labels have very little control. They've had to formularize and really streamline their output so it's financially viable, because if they don't get 30 writers on every track making 30 tracks a day on that formula, and the chords that they know work, that are going to earn them some money back. But this is the thing, it's like, do you want to sound like that? Do you want to sound... It doesn't matter whether you pick pop or tech house or drum and bass, or... It's like, you better not sound like everyone else. In a world where 100,000 tracks go up every single day, you better not sound like everyone else. That's not an impressive feat. Like the fact that if I've got my track close to Subfocus here, don't be impressed by that. You know, this is for educational purposes. Obviously, we need to learn by understanding what our heroes are doing right? This is kind of where this comes from. But you do this first, and then you find your own sound over time as you get good at your own. You find your own voice, you find your own sound, you find your own preferences. I'm just kind of a generic muso teaching you what I know. You know, I'm a genreless entity, right? As an artist, my brand's terrible, right? you imagine coming across Bthelick on Spotify. Yeah, I've got 300,000 monthly listeners or whatever, but that's just a consistency thing. Like, one track's drum and bass, the next is like cheesy pop house or whatever. It's like, they're all like, I'm just trying stuff because it goes back to what I was saying earlier. In the record label world of old, before everything went digital, you could have one bad track and that would tank your entire career. People would boo you on stage. You wouldn't be able to get any more gigs. Record label drops you. Then you've got no more access to recording studios, distribution, and you end up selling CDs on the corner of some high street store, right? That used to be a reality. So, but now the digital world means if I fail at a track, or I don't think it's quite finished, but I can't think of how to finish it, I can just release it, see what happens. If it gets 5 plays, I'll try again next week. And no one will remember my 5-play track. It will be forgotten. And I'll try again next week, and I'll learn from what I did last time. You've got infinite tries at very, 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 very close to zero cost. You don't have to go into a recording studio. You don't have to hire a drum kit. That's the advantage of this music, right? We can be so creative. We've got so many tools. We don't have to hire a record label to distribute to record stores because they've bought the shelf space already, and they have the billboards bought up so they can put posters for people to drive past and ignore, and buy TV adverts on the 4 TV channels that exist. None of that exists anymore. they're shouting at no one. No one cares. So it's like, don't use a record label. Put some stuff out. You've got infinite tries. It's about, what's DistroKid? Like 50 quid a year? Hello, Jin from South Korea. Wow, thank you. How long do I take to finish a track? About, from start to finish, anywhere from like 2 or 3 hours to 8 hours. And it goes out. Done. Now, if I'm working with, shall we say, old school industry types, there's going to be an A&R guy at some record label that wants his say. Because he has to earn his money, right? So they might step in and say, oh, we think the vocal needs to repeat in the second verse, the main hook or something. They might have like an arrangement tip or something like that. A long time ago, people used to ask if they could master the tracks, and then they couldn't even beat my unmastered mix. So they've stopped asking now. But that's the kind of thing that take more time. The track is done the day it starts, usually, for me. But that, again, we're talking 15 years down the line. A&R Andy's, yeah. They have to justify their existence. So you end up with this nonsense feedback where they're trying to act like a producer. It's the most annoying thing. It's like, well, the producer already produced the track. What is your input about exactly? Anyway, it's usually nonsense. Yes, you need to stop tweaking compressors and hit the release button. Hit the render button and then hit the upload button. And then go on to the next track. It's the best advice I could give you. Reference every 20 minutes. Stop being so precious. Be free with your ideas. If it's not finished, release it anyway. Because this is the thing about unfinished tracks, right? Apart from the fact you never know where it's going to, where it's going to land, who's going to like it, which random TikToker might use it in the background of a cat video, all of that's out of your control. It might as well be exist in the spider web of the internet somewhere as a breadcrumb to be picked up. It might as well exist than not exist. If you weren't happy with it, you can always just do another version. How many DJs have you seen put out brackets VIP edit? Or, you know what happens with collabs? So, Skrillex and Fortet collab, right? And then next thing you see is Skrillex edit. And then there's a version of the track called the Fortet edit because they didn't agree on the arrangement. So they had 3 goes at it. I'm not saying that happened to that track, but it happens all the time. So you've got as many goes as you want. You might as well release it because if you release often and you put yourself on deadline, you just get so much better at everything. You learn more from it being in the real world than you do from second guessing yourself tweaking that compressor for the next 10 months. Get it released. Don't be scared. Stephen King, the great author, I don't know if doesn't matter if you like his books or not, but he didn't believe in writer's block. And there's a good reason. There's a evolutionary how our brain works. Have you heard about the lizard brain or the chicken brain? So this is really important to know. We share the same brain as a chicken underneath. The small part of the brain called the amygdala that sits right there on top of your spinal column. That's the same as a chicken or any undeveloped. We developed the rest on top, the neocortex, right? So that's how we got big brain. But the thing that shortcuts your nervous system, your fight or flight response, your emotional response, what makes you angry, what makes you horny, everything. What guides our evolution, that's the chicken brain. And what happens is, when you're doing creative work, the chicken brain is screaming. By the way, the chicken brain was in charge of you in high school. Seth Godin talks about this, one of my heroes. So every time you're doing creative work, the chicken brain is screaming in your subconscious, that's stupid, they're going to laugh at you. Or even the most dangerous one is, that's not been done before, that's not a guaranteed route to success. You need to be safe. You need to do something safer. Do what everyone else does. That's the chicken brain. And that's responsible for all of your writer's block, because all it turns out to be is you're just too afraid to commit to the final thing. You're too afraid to hit finish and upload. You're tweaking for 10 years on that compressor because by uploading it, you have committed and you've said to the world, here, judge me. And that's really scary. The chicken brain doesn't like that. The chicken brain thinks everyone's going to judge you. No one's going to let you make another song. You're never going to get any work again. All the record labels are going to tell all the other record labels that you're terrible. And that means you'll never find... You've spent all your time trying to learn music, so now you can't get another job. And then you're going to starve and you're going to die. That's literally like the whole thought process of the chicken brain behind when you're trying to make a new tune. So that's why you're scared, and it's normal to be scared. And what you do is, next time you're scared to release something, you just lean into it. Go for it. Every time you have that thought about, well, this is a bit weird, or this shouldn't work, but it's sounding great, you just run with it. Hit the release button and move on to the next track. Damn you, chicken brain. It's true. It's a real thing. It shortcuts all your decisions because it's connected to your nervous system. And it's dumb as hell and scared. It's just dumb and scared. Yeah, we should do some drum and bass stuff soon. I'm not going to attempt that name. My screen is too small to see whether that's a bunch of I's, L's. I'm going to call you. Yeah, we should do some drum and bass. Your tracks feel empty, like there's no driving force. Okay. Yeah, that's a groove thing, probably. Well, sound design, groove thing. Yeah, as always, it's about the source sounds, right? But yeah, we should do some drum and bass. I need to check my... How long have we been going for? My stomach is growling, so I think it's time... It's time for food. Oh, we've been live for 3 hours 48 minutes. Oof. That flew. Yeah, I'm going to love you and leave you, beautiful people. If I didn't get to your question, I'm really sorry. I do talk a lot. It takes me about half an hour to answer one question. I'll have to see if I can get... this is why videos take me 3 days, right? I'm just terrible at concise thought. Most of the effort goes into trying to make the information palatable and in decent order. You can see from my rambling why the videos take a while. The video will be uploaded anyway, Woodsman, so if you want to scan through it, it just gets uploaded automatically. I don't even think I have any control. I don't press an upload button, I just hit end stream and then it appears on my on the live block of the channel, so it'll all be there. All of my rants in one convenient 4-hour chunk. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for the recent... the channel has exploded. I am so thankful. Thank you to everyone who's told someone else or hit subscribe or commented or in any way, just thank you for being there. Thank you for the support. It's been absolutely incredible. Yeah, 10k. I mean, are we there already? What's going on? It's probably tomorrow, isn't it? It has calmed down now. I think YouTube stopped recommending the Tech House video. So there's been, I can see the fall off a little bit now. So we're back to normal. Yeah, wow, 9.3 we're on. Redonkulous. Redonkulous. Thank you so much, everyone. Music Making Therapy channel. Yes, tune in next week for more brain science and psychoacoustics and... God, we covered a lot, didn't we, today? Wow. We went everywhere. I'm supposed to be talking about chords and things. Yeah, that's holistic thinking for you. I'm so sorry. I mean, it's important. I'd rather you had the bigger picture than the zoomed in picture, right? But if it was a bit big picture thinking for you, I'm sorry. We'll get to some more specific track and music stuff next one, maybe. But really, thank you, everyone. Yes, I'm working on melodic house and melodic techno soon. Drum and bass and garage as well. There's lots to come. Yeah. Yep, I'm going to be a very busy boy. Recap. Use better samples, don't compress. Exactly. Gain stage properly. Yeah, properly. Well, gain stage properly when using virtual analog. Otherwise, it doesn't matter. Release consistently. Yes. Vital can do anything. Including dust sucking your floor. Yes, Vital can do everything. It made me a cup of tea once, I swear. It's that useful. Anyway. Beautiful people, thank you very much. The video is automatically loaded, I think, so if you miss anything, have a scan. It's all completely random, but probably useful. You're all fantastic. Thank you very, very much. Bye-bye.